and gentlemen, and welcome to the City of East Providence City Council meeting. Today is Tuesday, October 29th. May we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Don't mind me, my wig came off. Madam Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Here.
Councilman Morado.
Here.
Councilwoman Souza. Here. Council Vice President Rodrick.
Here.
And Council President Brito.
Here. Next item, please.
Next item is approval of consent calendar.
Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar? So move.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morado.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza. Aye. Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Thank you. Aye. Next item, please.
Appointments. Mayoral appointment requiring council approval for the Zoning Board. Richard Croak, term expiring 8/20/2024. Appointment from alternate to member. This is for the vote.
Okay.
Mr. President?
Yes.
A question I would have, I know there is a new ordinance from the last council or a procedure that members of the public would be noticed or invited to apply for commissions and boards as openings occur. So I'm not sure if that happened here or not. I don't know if anyone knows that or if we should put this off until we find that out.
Mr. Solicitor?
I'm not aware. I don't know the city clerk.
His application was displayed as it should be. There wasn't any response other than that.
Yeah, I'm sure his application, but was the general public invited or was there, and I wasn't here. Wasn't there something the last council passed that said,
yes,
you've got to advertise or make...
Isn't it always posted?
we changed that at the beginning of the year, so there's a new procedure, 10 days. Yeah, we voted on that to allow new people the opportunity to go into these boards and commissions, correct?
That's what I'm asking, if we know if that occurred.
The advertisement portion of it.
The advertisement portion of it. And
Well, you said it was...
It was displayed in a display case that was in the hall. In regards to any kind of advertisement to let the public know that there was an opening, there wasn't anything to my knowledge. Council Vice President?
With that said, I agree with what you're saying, Councilman Rodrick. I would like to find out more if that ordinance was followed prior to making a motion to approve this.
Well,
so make sure that we're following the ordinance.
so if that's a motion to table, I'll second.
I'll make a motion to table.
Well, Mr. Solicitor, you have any information on this at this time?
No, I don't at all. I know there are a lot of appointments that are up. I know they're always up, so I don't know if this was advertised or not. I believe that they generally, I don't know the procedure other than what you guys passed.
So, Councilman, other than the 10 days of having it being posted, what are you referencing?
Well, was it posted those 10 days?
According to the clerk, it was.
On a board, is that what the ordinance calls for, or does it call for a newspaper posting or advertising?
I'm not so sure if it requires a posting. Actually, the policy director just walked in, not to put you on the spot, Mr. Furtado, but I am. We're having a question of the zoning board appointment for Mr. Croak.
So I guess my other question is, now that it's a mayoral appointment, obviously he gets the recommendation, he gets the application, but with council approval, I think it's important that the council also gets notification that there's an applicant seeking an appointment that's being considered, and to see that, because the whole point of that initial resolution was to see the qualifications and, do some research on our end to see if we were interested in appointing or reappointing somebody.
And also give the opportunity to other people to apply.
Yes. Off the top of my head, I don't remember the exact number of years, but Mr. Croak has been on the zoning board for quite a number. He's actually going, it's not a reappointment, he's going from an alternate to a member because the current Ward 2 member, the term expired, but he's also moved to Ward 1. But he has gone through the proper procedure. In fact, he filled out that paperwork in May, I think. So it was posted for, I don't know, months, maybe. So there has been ample time. He's a model student for the ordinance, to put it mildly.
So is he in Ward 2?
Yes.
So considering that he has been on the board for some time as an alternate, and now he's seeking to be appointed as a permanent, as you may?
Yep.
In a permanent position. I don't know what rules are that we need to know personally that need to apply to this.
Well, also in deference, if it is a Ward 2, I mean, traditionally, those were ward appointments. It's a little different now. It's now mayoral appointment, but with our consent. But I would defer to the councilwoman from Ward 2. If she doesn't have a problem, I would withdraw my second and ask for you to withdraw the motion if that's
So I would want to see, I'd want to take a little bit more time, because I didn't know that he had applied in May, like I think most of the council. So this is the first time that I had seen it when it came up on the docket on Friday, so there was no pre-communication even a week prior
Well,
from the mayor's office regarding...
there was the letter. I don't remember. I don't have it on me right now, but I believe it was sent.
So I didn't get a
September.
communication, is what I'm saying about a reappointment for any board.
Okay.
The only one that I did get was for the Personnel Hearing Board, I believe, that we did. But I've never received one for the Zoning Board. I don't know if other council members did, but I did not personally.
I could tell you right now real quickly if I did or not.
So I would entertain the motion to continue.
Well, we're meeting again on the 5th, November
Right.
5th, so we could
Put it
address
back on.
this pretty quickly.
I mean, if you want to put it back on, that's the council's prerogative. But again, this is someone who's been on the board for years and also has been waiting since May.
Well, that's not the council's fault that he's been waiting since May. It hasn't been up in front of the councils every docket since May, correct? Right, this is the first time it's being put on the docket.
No, but I don't think it
So
would be.
I see a communication, let me just make sure here.
What date is that for?
Not to the entire council. There's a communication I want to request that they quote appointment to zoning board. Is this the zoning? Yep. Be placed on October 15th docket. Attach a signed communication letter if you want to add this to the docket, and also add application form through. I ask that you please leave that. Okay, I won't get into that. Yeah. It was just, it's a letter. You're not copied on this, just asking.
So that's my
to be
point.
placed on.
So
Mr.
I'm not
President.
aware of it and not having ample time to look into it. And I understand that he was, I mean, he is an alternate, but
The only reason that the entire council wasn't copied on that was that I was told, I sent it to the council president, I was told, advised by the assistant solicitor, that to avoid any potential open meetings conflicts, not to email the entire council as a body. So I just sent it to the council president, I believe the clerk and the city solicitor.
Yes, in addition to Patricia, Samantha, myself, and the city solicitor. That's correct.
So he's still a voting member now.
Yeah.
He's an alternate with voting, so he's not being harmed by if we wait till November 6th. So I would like to wait. So there's a...
There's a motion and a second.
There is a motion on the floor to table this further, going back to the next city council meeting on November 5th, that is. Okay, and was that motion seconded by anyone?
Councilman Roderick. Councilor Roderick.
Yes, I think I made the motion, Councilman Murado
Okay.
seconded.
Okay, very good. Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morado.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council Vice President Roderick.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Aye. Next item, please.
Council appointment, Waterfront Commission, David O'Connell, term expiring 10/31/2023. New member for vote. Appointment sponsored by Councilwoman Souza.
So Mr. O'Connell is known by many in the community. He's a very active resident. He sits on the Arts Council. He does a lot of volunteer work. He's very knowledgeable in many areas, and I think he brings a lot to the Waterfront Commission if it is the pleasure of the council to appoint him. I've had lengthy discussions, and he has the same vision that we do here in the city, along with some of the members also on the Waterfront Commission. I think he would be a great asset for us to add him to that role. So the pleasure of the council, if nobody has any questions or comments, I make a motion to approve his appointment.
Okay, would anyone like to second that?
Second, I would confirm Mr. O'Connell's been a very active community member, and I'd be happy to second that.
Okay, very good. Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morado.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council Vice President Roderick.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Aye, thank you. Moving right along to the next item, please.
Council Communications, discussion requesting information on any and all non-budgeted financial accounts. Council Vice President Roderick.
Thank you, Mr. President. During the budget process, which I think went along very well, but we did discover, or at least have a discussion on some items. And one of the items was that there are funds in the city that don't appear in the budget or in the budget book. Some of them small, some of them big. The big one was the Live Nation account, which is probably now approaching about $70,000. I don't think anything wrong is going on here other than it would have helped us in the budget process, and I think we as a council and taxpayers should know where every tax dollar is. So using that as an example, the Live Nation account, that's not $70,000 that would be in a line item in the traditional budget, but I would think there'd be a page in the next budget book that would explain it. And it was earmarked strictly for recreational use, maybe parks as well. So we had some lengthy discussions about whether or not we could continue a quality fireworks display, and this is just an example. I'm not saying the money should go for that only. But instead of arguing about $3,000 here or there so that we could keep a quality concert and fireworks program, which every year draws thousands of people to Pierce Stadium, we had $70,000 that we didn't know about that we could have used. And we were told that it hasn't been used yet, so that's a good thing. The money is there. So I asked, when they had sent prior, and again, I don't want to put Director Furtado on the spot, but he's been very cooperative, at least very good with me in getting information, and I think the finance director was supposed to prepare something for my request for tonight to either pass something out or at least verbally let us know what other accounts are in the city that are not in the budget. What are they? How much money is there? That's the basis of this docket item. So I don't know, Mr. President, if it's appropriate this time. Let's see, the Director Moore is here, if he has that information.
Councilman, I'm sorry, I did not bring that tonight. We were working on the school stuff, the 6.5 million or the capital. So I can get that for you first thing tomorrow. I don't have it with me tonight.
Well, I'm a reasonable person. I understand busy schedules. We're meeting again November 5th.
Okay.
You don't have to do it for tomorrow. Could, Madam Clerk, could we put this on the agenda, if it's okay with Council President also, and put it on the agenda for then, and then if the director could have that information for us?
Schaff is the name, by the way, John Schaff. Very good. Ms. Moore, thank you. We'll table this for the next November 5th meeting. Thank you, Councilman. Moving right along to the next discussion, sponsored by Councilman Rodericks.
Thank you, President Shaft. This is the item that has been discussed. I don't see the dollar amount on the agenda, but I think that's probably because it's still in question. And again, during the budget process, it was information was brought forward that there is $6.5 million of, I'll use the word surplus, that's what I'm hoping to find out tonight, what it is, but that there is $6.5 million in city coffers that is earmarked strictly for the school department, and I believe there's an audit report that I haven't seen yet, but there's an audit report that says that money has to go to the school department. So unless anyone else here, the council has received anything, I haven't received anything yet. I don't know what the auditor said. I know that Director Moore said that it was not a surprise, and that I don't see the mayor, but I heard from the mayor that he said city and school officials have been discussing this for years. So I'm trying to find, we all are, we're trying to just get to the bottom of this. Is there this account available? Is it $6.5 million? Where was it born? What's the paper trail? Where did it come from? I know that Councilman Cahoon said he sat on a school committee for 4 years, and I believe you said that it's not anything you've been aware of. Yeah. And I know Council President and Councilwoman Souza have been on the City Council for a few years, and they don't have any information on it. So where did this start? Where did it come from? Is this from an auditor? Is there an auditor's letter?
No, you're correct. On the cities and school books, there's a line in the balance sheet that says, on the city side, due to school, on the school side, due from city for $6.5 million. Now, that line item has been on the books. I went back to 1991. I found the audit back in 91. There's a line item on the books going back to 1991. And I guess the way to explain it is the school used to call up and request, I need money for accounts payable for payroll. So at the end of October, they had payables and payroll that rolled into November. So they didn't request that money. So the money sits there and says, okay, we owe it to you in November. I have the audit in front of me. It's still in the draft form. It should be finalized in the next week or two. At the end of 18, the school had $6.9 million in cash, and they have something what they call due from others, which is the city and others, for $8.1 million. The bottom line is they've got a fund balance of $5.1 million. So if we transfer the money over, that 6.8 would go to $14 million. The due from others would go down to about $2 million. It wouldn't change the fund balance of $5.1 million. We owe them money. We just haven't paid it to them. And so if we gave it to them at the end of the year, they'd just have more cash and less receivables. But they would still have $5 million of undesignated fund balance.
Is that money sitting in some account, or?
The 6.5?
Correct.
Yes, right, well, it's in the city's general fund. Now, as I said, we run out of money every year in January, or February, or March, depending on how flush we are with cash. When we run out of money, that includes the 6.5. All the money is now gone. So we could transfer that money to the school, but if they kept it, and we continue on the way we are, then we'd have to end up borrowing another $6.5 million for TANs at a cost of about $80,000.
But we're borrowing that money anyway,
Well,
because there's no more money in the coffer.
yeah, there's no more money.
Right.
But if I had to give them the $6 million,
You just have
then I would
to
be
increase
less to
your
borrow another $6 million.
loaning, right.
right?
What did the auditor's letter say? Is there a letter?
No.
Was there a report?
On this number?
Yes.
No. This number has been, I sent something to the mayor a couple of times. We did it, I don't know if we sent it out to you today or not. It's like a 3-page letter with 20 pages of substantiating data. This due to and due from number has to be reconciled with the school every year. It's kind of been an issue for the last few years. There's emails going back from myself, Paul Luba, the school administration, the auditors, the auditor general about this number. It's just a matter of tying the number out, got to be a little tedious. So everybody was aware of it. I think I went back 2 years through the superintendent was here and said, okay, here are my emails to the former finance director, the current finance director, the controller, as we went back and forth over what the number was going to be. So this number shouldn't have been a surprise to anybody. I'm not quite sure how it got to where it was, where it seemed like I was trying to hide the money. It was completely false.
Malcolm, where did that money come from? How did the city receive the 6.5?
We used to share one bank account. So when the school had to pay accounts payable or payroll, they would say, make sure there's money in that account. So if they had a surplus for that year, there was no way for me to give it to them, because if I cut them a check out of this one account, they were going to deposit back in this one account, which is the city's account. So there was really no way to give the school. And so at the end of the year, there was usually money left over. And so it was probably given in November.
But isn't that money, I mean, we're not balancing a residential home here. We're balancing millions of dollars, regardless if it was in the same bank account. Isn't there a record earmarked, out of the 100 million that's in bank account A, 6.5 belongs to so-and-so? Isn't there like a record of, all of the monies that are in that one account? And when that bank account will get divided? When did the
It's not a
school-
separate bank account. We had one bank account. And,
I understand that, but my point is, I'm learning this as privately the audience and the public is at the same time. And I know 6.5 is a lot of money to, give up, but if it doesn't belong to us, it doesn't belong to us. I'm just trying to wrap my head around how the city never, until now, it seems like we just discovered this now. But regardless if the money was in one bank account, why wasn't it earmarked or a line item, that even though you have X amount of dollars in a bank account, but X amount of dollars belong to, for this line item, X amount belong to that line item. I don't understand that.
if I may, I've got 2 pieces of paper. I've only got one copy, but I could show the council president. That may help shed some light on this. And this is, I told you about the 18 audit. This is a copy of the school's balance sheet. And on it, they have this line item I've underlined. On this one, I don't have a description. And you will see it says 9.2 million, and it ends at 6.5 million. And I think I left the sheet over there I need. Oh, and so, and on the city's general fund, we've got a line item, and it's called
Due to the school?
Yeah, it's called Due to School, and it mirrors, so you can see it mirrors their side. So if you want to, this is the school books, and I underline it, and here's the city.
What
So
year is this from?
This is the audit that's almost done for 18. So on the city side, it says due to school, general fund, it starts at 9.6 million. This is from their accounting system. And then it ends at 6.5, which is the same as theirs. So this number has been on their balance sheet and on our balance sheet for years. And so they show it on theirs, we show it on ours.
Okay, can I ask you, could they have spent this money through the last several years, that it was evidently there? Why, and I'm not blaming you, Malcolm, I'm just saying, and I don't think, you mentioned nobody's trying to hide anything. I don't think that's the case. And I also don't want to use the terms we and them, us and them. This is one city. It's not about us and them, but it's about fair appropriations. And I've seen the last several years the school department having items cut and things they couldn't do. But yet, it sounds like there was some money available. So why, I don't, last year, and I wasn't here, was the school budget cut at all last year? I'm wondering if there was a cut, that probably could have been avoided if there was $6.5 million.
Now, I don't want to get too technical, but the 6.5, all that would do was, they took that 6.5 million, put it in the capital, I believe, most of it anyway, in a capital plan. So once they start spending down the capital plan, we would give them money for that. What this shows is, at the beginning of 18, it was 9.6 million, and at the end, it was 6.5. So when the school needs the extra money, we would give it to them. So they needed $3 million extra in 18, so we gave it to them. We still have 6.5 to give them. So whenever they call and request the money, we turn it over to them. So we've never said no to them. It's just they haven't needed it, but they started drawing down on it last year.
Do we know the origin of that funds in terms of what percentage of it might be state funds, what percentage of it might be from the city general treasury? So that's sort of lost in the chewed bubble gum of into and out of over the course of years? Okay.
Like I said, I went back to 1991, and there was a due to school for $4.5 million. So it's been on the books for 30 years.
So if they ask you tomorrow, let's say they want to, which we know they want to do, they want to put a security vestibule at Riverside Middle School as an example. And I don't know if that's going to cost $500 or $1 million, but if they ask you for the X amount of dollars, are they going to get it?
They can. We've never said no to them. It's, the money was there. When they needed it, they draw it down. As we went through this with their finance department for the last couple of years, we always knew what that number was. And at the year end, we'd say, hey, like in 18, they drew $3 million of that. So they drew down a third of it. If they actually wanted it all, now you get into the question of cash flow and interest and who pays for it. We give them 1/12. So let's say that's $7 million a month. If I give them the $6 million and I continue to give them that 7 they normally get, then theoretically I would have to borrow $6 million more than I had planned on. And that was an extra cost.
But that's only if that money is currently allocated in the budget for some other use than for schools, right? Why would we have to, if that, let's call it 6.5 million,
okay.
Right? Let's just call it 6 million, right? Just because it's easier to say than 6.5. Let's say it's $6 million. If that $6 million is sitting in an account and it can be used for school and only school use, why would it impact the amount that we have to budget, the amount that we have to borrow for city operations?
Because when the city runs out of money, so I've got the $6.5 million on my side, on the city side. When I run out of money, it includes that $6.5 million. So if I sent that to them, I just wouldn't have that 6.5 to spend on the city side. And when I went to borrow money, I'd have to borrow what I normally would plus that 6.5 I just gave the school.
Right, but that's my point, is why would it ever be spent for the city side at all? If it's been sitting there for years, if it can be used for no other purpose than for school purposes, then if we need $160 million to fund the operations of the city, and just the city, right, it wouldn't be 160, let's say, call it 100. If we need $100 million to fund the operations of the city, then we need $100 million to fund the operations of the city, regardless of whether it's $6 million, $12 million, $24 million sitting in this account, right? That should not impact the amount that we have to borrow to fund the operations of the city. Yes or no?
But if I start off the year with, say, 50 million,
Right?
and I run out in 4 months, and if I reduce that by 6 million, when I run out, I'll run out $6 million sooner. So
I think the question should be, who does that money belong to? Are we using it properly to, so we don't have to borrow as many TANs? And if it does belong to the school, how do we make that right? How do we make them whole? I guess the question everyone has is, how do we pay back the school the 6.5 that is owed to the school? And I understand what you're saying, but it sounds like we're borrowing money, using money that doesn't belong to us to begin with. That doesn't make any sense.
yes and no. You're right in a way that this money is earmarked for the school. When we go to borrow TANs, an amount of that money is to borrow for the school department because they don't get their state aid till 6 months. So for those first 6 months, let's just say for argument's sake that their spend is $7 million a month. And my 1/12 that I give them is $4 million. So each month, they're short $3 million. At the end of 6 months, that's $18 million they've had to borrow from the city. Now they get the $18 million back from the state. So they're pretty much even at the end of 6 months. And then they draw down again. But if you're looking at who's borrowing the money, the city borrows the money for TANs. But the reason is because the city and school need money. So, technically, I could give them the $6 million, but then I should probably bill them for their share of the TANs.
I don't think I follow any of that. If I may, Mr. President, I mean, and I'm not accusing anybody of hiding anything. I recall 4 years, 5 years worth of contentious discussions. Tony was here with me. A number of parents were here. I know the superintendent, 2 superintendents were here with all of us when we were fighting for $100,000, $200,000, $500,000. And at no time during any of those meetings did anybody ever stand up and say, why are you guys barking for more money? There's $6 million or $7 million sitting right there. Just take it and go, because I think we would have took it and gone. I don't know how that cannot come up at a budget discussion specifically about the school budget. That seems ludicrous.
This is not additional money. So if you had a surplus last year of $1 million, you've got an additional $1 million to spend, but you really shouldn't be spending that for ongoing expenditures, maybe one time. Does that make sense?
I guess if we followed a traditional year-on-year appropriations cycle like the feds do, yes, I would say. But the city doesn't do that.
Yeah. But on the school side, they have a surplus of $5.1 million at the end of 18, which the superintendent, I have not seen the documents, but I believe she's earmarked that all for capital. The $5.1 million is all the school has to spend that's not earmarked for regular operations. And I believe she's earmarked that for capital. I went through this with the mayor and his staff, is that, like I said, if you looked at the audit, you've got assets, which are your cash and your receivables, minus what you owe people. And the difference is the fund balance, which is $5 million. So if they've got $5 million to spend, that's all the free dollars they have. So if I gave them the money, the 6.5, what would happen is their cash would go up and their receivables would go down, which is fine. But you would still have the same $5 million to spend.
Okay, sure, right? Let's say that, right?
Yeah.
Let's say, again, let's use an easy number. Let's say the school number was an $80 million request, right? Well, let's say $40 million, right? I think we wound up getting 50 this year for schools. Let's say the school's making a $40 million request. Why wouldn't the city say, you didn't spend all the money that you used last year, why are you going to ask for $40 million to fund this coming year's operations when you only spent 35 in the previous years? That question never came up. What came up was, how is the city going to take on an additional tax burden to be able to fund the school department? That was said over and over again. Never was, hey, you got this money sitting there, so we're all cool.
Over the last 5 years, the school had say, a $2.5 million surplus, a $2.5 million surplus, a $300,000 surplus, a $600,000 deficit, and then a $1.2 million deficit. Overall, there's still 5.1. I guess the easiest way to explain it is when we were talking last year, the city owed the school $6.5 million. They had $6.5 million in fund balance, which they were going to use for capital. So the money was there when they decided to spend the money for capital. Besides that, they didn't need it. So when they spent the capital, we would give it to them, and that way it would draw down on that 6.5.
So where is the audit showing this deficit number? Because again, on 4 years sitting on the school committee with monthly budget reports, not once did I ever see we're operating in the red.
If I could just make a quick point here. It's well established that the city owes the school $6.5 million. Am I clear on that? Okay.
That is correct.
So, and this is the first that I've heard it this year, being on the council for 4 years. And I only say this because it brings me back immediately to last year, this time during the budget, when the interim city manager, the chief of police, who presented a 2.9 tax increase to the council, and we said unacceptable. We want it at 1%, 1.5%. Come back at that. It came back, and there were additional cuts being made throughout the city, and more importantly, $200,000, if I'm not mistaken, was cut from the school department. At that point in time, there was, some bickering going back and forth that, the school department needed the money, but I would think at that point that, somebody would have said, hey, time out. We have, by the way, $6.5 million in an account sitting over here that we don't need to cut that from the school's budget. And that's, if I'm not mistaken, that's the total amount that was cut from last year's. In addition to the initial cut that was made, there was, on top of that, $200,000 cut that was made. And not at any point in time was that brought to anybody's attention, well, at least not my attention at that time, to say, hey, we got this money sitting over here. We can very easily, because if I'm not mistaken, that money was going to be, it was removed for a couple of things with transportation, if I'm not mistaken, one. But more importantly, there was even a discussion about shifting the money from a capital, whether or not it could be shifted from a capital for bleachers. If I'm not mistaken, it was like bleachers that were going to be used. And so it was going to be used as a capital. More importantly, the money was going to be taken out of a capital fund. And at that point in time, I would think that somebody would have raised the flag or raised their hand and said, time out, we do have additional money. But that wasn't said at that point in time. So my concern just was that, and over the years of going back and forth with the school department and cuts being made, whether it was on the capital side or otherwise, now one point in time that it was brought up in any meeting that I recall being in, that there was this, whether it was 6.5, 8.6, or $2.3 million that was sitting in a capital fund for the school department. You don't need to. Okay. You don't need to respond to that. I just recall that conversation because we as well took some heat for that $200,000, and I thought that would have been a great time. And I had sidebar conversations with Mr. Luba afterwards. We meted him. We had recess for a little bit and had conversations with him, and again, it was never brought to my attention, and certainly wasn't publicly brought to the council's attention that money was there, that in an event that cut was being made, that okay, we could avoid that cut by just saying.
It doesn't work that way. I know it's kind of confusing. If the school's budget is $80 million, and I transfer the 6.5 over to them in cash, it doesn't change their budget of $80 million. That's just the way.
Okay.
And so I know it sounds odd. It's
Yeah.
kind
So
of
similar to like our capital improvement budget, whether we spend 1.6 million or 6 million, it's not going to change our bottom line
Right.
on our tax, on our
pretty much.
overall
Right.
budget.
The money's there to be spent, like we put money over in the capital fund. So there's, say, 10 million in capital. So whether you spend it or not, it's still there. Whether I move the cash over, it's still technically there. I owe it to them.
But what it might change, now, to use that example that the judge shows us about the capital fund, yes, it isn't going to change the bottom line, but it will change, and it could change. Instead of spending X amount of dollars on a city project, in the budget, as a line item, we would take it from the capital account. Same thing with the schools. If there have been things they haven't done through the years, but I think they could have done. So let's get to the bottom line. There's no dispute that the city side of government owes the school side of government, whatever the final number is, $6.5 million.
That is correct.
Okay, so there's no dispute about that. What is the financial hardship to you as the financial representative of the city if tomorrow you gave them that check for $6.5 million?
It would affect cash flow, which probably would, in effect, increase the borrowing for TANs.
What would the effect be if you gave them half of it up front?
When I calculated what another $6.5 million would be, it was $82,000. So if you gave them half, it'd be $41,000.
And I think that's a
But at some
discussion.
point, it's got to go to them.
And I
That's
think
true.
that's a discussion that
And-
the city will have with the school department as well going forward. I mean, this is, we can go on all night with this, to be quite honest with you. So, Councilman, if you don't mind, if we can just, and thank you, Mr. Moore, for explaining. However, I think this is, I mean, even if we want to continue this at another time, we could do that, but for now, I would just suggest that if we could just wrap this line item, and then I would just make a quick,
I'm fine with putting this on to another meeting, but at that meeting, I would like to hear from the school department.
That's fine.
I would like to just hear from their finance person and superintendent, you know, what are they seeing at this point, and where would they like to go from this point? We're not going to do that tonight, I know that. They're here, I appreciate seeing them here in support of city government, but whether it's the next meeting or the second meeting in November, sure, I'm all set for tonight.
thank you, Councilman. Thank you, Malcolm. And before we proceed on with council communications, number C, at the pleasure of the council, I just want to ask, because we do have people here waiting for a license, if we can quickly go through the license, they're looking at me, I don't know if it's because of the wig I have on or because they're just tired and bored of what's going on here, but either way,
I'll make a motion.
if we could move on to licenses, and so we don't have to bore them anymore with this.
I'm okay with that.
Okay?
Okay, so with that being said, we're just going to move right on to licenses, licensing not required public hearing, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Okay.
Application for special event, alcoholic beverage Class F. These are for the vote. The first item is St. Brendan's Parish, Tamara Primer, turkey raffle, November 16th, 2019.
Is the applicant here at this point in time? Doesn't appear that anyone from St. Brendan's is here as well. Again, this is for a turkey raffle. Would anyone like to have any questions from the council?
Everything's in order.
Everything's in order? Okay, so we have a motion on the floor for approval. Anyone like to second it? And we have a second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilman Morado.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Aye, thank you. The next one, please.
Next is St. Martha's Church, Reverend David E. Green, talent show and dinner, November 16th, 2019.
Is there a representative from St. Martha's Church here? Anyone at all? Father Green, I don't see. Okay.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza. Aye. Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Aye. Next item, please.
St. Francis Xavier Church.
So moved.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Councilwoman Souza. Dinner, November 16th, 2019.
Motion to approve.
Second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Next item, please. Aye. Thank you.
Licensing with public hearing, application for victualling license Class 1 for boat, EDISU Restaurant, IPSU Restaurant, 250 Warren Avenue.
The applicant here.
Yes,
Mr. Chapman, please approach the podium.
thank you. If I could have AG and Mark come up,
Sure.
compliance. We also have the seller here, Stephen is here representing these.
Mike, put the mic on.
You get the mic?
I'm sorry. Yep, sorry. Thank you for moving us up on the docket, appreciate it. We're simply looking for the liquor license transfer and the victualling license, and looking for approval on that tonight.
Any questions from the council?
Everything in order?
Everything's in order, everything has been advertised accordingly.
And EBISU, what is? Oh, EBISU. Okay. And what was it before, Golden Dragon?
Golden Dragon, Young China. A lot of people know what it's at.
Yeah.
Young China, that's been there for 100 years, pretty much.
Yes.
No, right? You were
Yeah.
in town Providence at one point in time, going back, if I'm not mistaken, or no? In the 70s?
No, that was...
No?
No, that's where your hair came from.
What was John Chapp's name, real name?
Richard Rollins.
Richard Roundtree.
Roundtree.
Nice.
Yeah. Listen, you're not up here to quiz me, by the way. All right? No, but all kidding aside, did you have a son that went to Our Lady of Providence, OLP?
No.
No.
Wrong
She
family.
batting 1,000 here. Please proceed, Counsel.
The 70s caused a lot of problems.
I'm going back in time.
Mr. President, everything seems in order. It's a building and a restaurant we'd like to see active again. I would move approval.
Second.
Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Aye.
Thank you. That's for the victualling.
That's right.
The other one's for
Next
liquor
one,
license.
Class B.
We do have public comment on both of these.
Public hearing.
Public hearing on both licenses.
Okay, this is a public hearing at this point in time. Anyone from the public wishing to speak for or against this transfer? Again, I'm going to repeat this one more time, and I'm going to close for public comment. This is public comment. Anybody wishing to speak for or against this transfer of license? If not, public comment is now closed. We may proceed.
Make a motion to approve.
We have a motion on the floor by Councilwoman Souza. Would anyone like to second that motion?
Second.
We have a second by Councilman Cahoon. Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Council President Brito.
Aye. Thank you.
Good luck. Thank you, Judge Schuette, Laverne Shirley, John Chapp, and the Finance Director appearing as Pinocchio. Thank you.
Good luck.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Good luck.
Mr. President, I move that we go back to the regular order.
Where we may proceed back to council communications. We are now on item number C, discussion at the Carousel Capital Improvement Projects, Ice Rink and Blunt Restaurant. Councilman Morato.
Thank you, Council President. We started this discussion when we went through the capital improvement budget. However, tonight, I would like to, through the chair, if I could have Tracy Johnson. Tracy?
Ms. Johnson here? Yeah, sure.
This project, I feel it's an important project for Riverside, but I would like her to answer any questions that the council may have on these projects. And I grouped the ice rink with Blount Restaurant because of logistics and just a common sense approach to getting one done and the other. But however, I would like Tracy to answer any questions that the council may have.
Just before we get started, Mr. President, Tracy, do you envision, is there a bunch of charts here that you want to go through, or do you just have this up as a graphic, or?
I do have a presentation.
Okay, because if you do, I just wanted to move out there so I can actually see it. Okay, thank you.
Is this part of the presentation, screen?
And the only other procedural thing I would ask is how would this relate to, we're also discussing later, capital projects, and this is one of them. So is this different?
I think we started off, I personally would prefer not to go through every single one of them this evening. I don't know about the rest of the council, but considering that the councilman did put this on the docket, I'm willing to open this up for discussion and hear the presentation, but moving forward with all of the capital improvements at this point in time, I don't see us being in a rush right now.
I agree, Council President, and I put that on there. It is the first items in order on capital improvements, and my stance on some of these capital improvement projects, instead of just approving flat out, here's $400,000 for this, here's $200,000 for that, I like to at least get an explanation as to how they came up with that number.
Yeah, that was the intent of why I put it on for tonight.
Correct. And this is part of this process as to how they came up with that request, that ask.
Thank you, Councilman. Ms. Johnson?
Good evening, and thank you for allowing us to come back before you to discuss our request for capital improvement funding. We hope that this presentation will be able to provide you with the information you're looking for and clarification on our requests. We'll be happy to answer any remaining questions at the end of the presentation. These are the 3 items you see in the proposed budget book. We'd like to clarify request number 2, as we are not looking for funds to purchase an ice rink. In this presentation, we plan to explain what the $100,000 of requested funds would be used for and why. We will also go over the request for a new concession building, as the 2 requests are connected. But first, a little history. Crescent Park is the place to be, with the amusement rides, a ballroom, skating rink, penny arcade, photo studio, and so much more, including the home of the historic Charles I. D. Louf Carousel. The current carousel, originally built in 1895, is the second carousel Charles Louf built in the park. The Crescent Park Carousel is a showcase of Louf's most elaborate work. As he utilized this as his showroom, prospective buyers from across the United States would visit the carousel to purchase or order pieces for their own carousels, and his workshop was actually attached to the side of the carousel. In 1979, the park closed, and the carousel's fate was unknown until a group of local residents, Gail Durfee, Jobel Aguiar, Richard Lund, Linda McKenty, and Robin Peacock, also known as the Carousel 5, risked everything to ensure the carousel would remain for future generations to enjoy. The carousel is not just a local attraction. Every year, we have thousands of visitors from near and far. People from across the country and around the world come to see Louf's masterpiece. We receive requests for information from students across the United States who are working on history projects on the Louf specifically or carousels in general. We are looking at it as the best of the... I'm sorry. I'm super nervous all of a sudden. We are looked at...
Is it the fro?
I'm trying to know. Okay, I'm so sorry.
No, I'm sorry.
We are looked at as the best of the best, even by other carousels. We are not the oldest carousel, but we are thought to be the last remaining carousel to be operating in its originally built location with all of its original components, which is a remarkable testament to the care given to this truly magnificent work of art. Once the city took ownership of the carousel, there was a lot of work to be done. from underground to the tip of the cupola and everything in between. In 1991, a master plan was created by Extrados Architects for the city of East Providence. This plan includes all aspects of the carousel. Here you see only a small section covered in phases 1 and 2. This master plan for comprehensive restoration includes all aspects of the carousel and the grounds, including but not limited to the carousel pavilion and site improvements. Site improvements listed including rebuilding the midway and a concession building. It also discusses adding a function hall, gift shop, office, and a museum to the grounds of the carousel, with the thought that reconstruction of several outbuildings will enhance the quality of the carousel experience and add to the festivities while supporting current operations and continued restoration. Over the years, the members of the Carousel Park Commission have changed, but the sentiments are the same today as they were in 1991. We need to do more to support the carousel in the long term. The question has always been asked, what more can we offer to generate additional revenue? We need to support the current operations while also raising funds to make repairs as they arise. In addition, we need to stay on top of the upkeep types of restoration projects. Repairs and regular restoration are expensive and will be ongoing for the life of the carousel. With a list of ideas from the past members as well as current members, the Commission was uncertain how to begin to make these ideas a reality. Then we were fortunate enough to have David Backrack appointed to the Carousel Park Commission. Mr. Backrack was able to provide guidance and instruction. He let us know that first we needed to hire a landscape architect to develop a landscape master plan, that we would need to have public meetings, and we would need to gain City Council approval, and finally approval from the State Historic Preservation. So it began. And after going out for proposals, we hired Gifford Design Company and had our first informal meeting with them on April 27th, 2016. This was a brainstorming session, and a lot of great ideas were discussed. We were all excited to finally be moving in the right direction. After much discussion regarding building the midway to host arcade-style games, or having rentable space for seasonal vendors, as the original master plan requested, we found it did not fit with the current times or our location. We're far from Narragansett, Watch Hill, and Mesquamaket, and the thought was that it would be hard to retain seasonal vendors. We are, however, a family destination for visitors from near and far. We needed to come up with ideas to help increase the revenue while providing visitors with a little something extra to do while they're here. How great would it be if we could find avenues that would allow for off-season activities throughout the winter, which would continually have revenue coming in? We spent time discussing items that were once at the park and are still popular today. We researched items at neighboring parks and other local carousels. We even brought in a train to gauge interest and feasibility of having one operate on the grounds. We went through and projected revenues and expenses. Each item has and will continue to be thoroughly scrutinized before any implementation. So far, we visited other locations that have similar features, discussing staffing concerns, costs, and available profit. The research shown here shows that operations cover costs while still making a profit annually. There is also tremendous sponsorship opportunity that will benefit the continued restoration of the carousel. Hopefully you can see those numbers there. But the train, depending on ticket sales, could bring in, if we choose the $3 per ticket, we could be looking at $30,000 a year, and that does not include the sponsorship opportunities. The train sides have an area for businesses to be listed. The ice skating rink, again, sponsorships aside, is bringing in around $28,000 a year. Ice skating rinks have backer boards all the way around it. Each of those backer boards are available for sponsorship. If you combine these, and of course, plus, if you keep with the current lease, we'd be looking at $24,000 for a year-round restaurant. Of course, those terms could change when the lease is up. But if you combine these, you're looking at, with sponsorships, well over $100,000 annually to benefit the carousel.
If I may just interject, you said initially that there's not purchasing, there's no purchase of an ice skating rink?
Nope. We are not looking to
didn't-
purchase any of these features. I'll get there, I'm sorry.
Okay, no, that's okay. Go ahead.
You're missing, can you go back? I'm looking for the one that looks like this. Can you back up? And just go forward one more. If not, we're going to wing it. All right, you can just stay there for a little bit. I do have, and I can pass it down if you promise to send it right back because my cheat sheets are on it. You don't have to pay too much attention because this is not how the design looks, but originally, and this was brought up at the council in 2017. I just need to get through my notes. I'm sorry. With profitable features in mind, a design was formed, public meetings were held, and concerns were addressed. The next step was approval from City Council.
Tracy, can I ask one dumb question? Having established that the city owns the building, does the city also own all of the grounds in the photo that we're looking at here?
Yes.
And it's up there? Okay.
The deed for the property actually goes from Carousel Drive down to the beachfront. I'm sorry, I would have come to get that. That's not sounding good for my presentation. Stay there, though. Once we had our public meetings, it was time for City Council approval. The City Council reviewed the plans presented, the one that you just saw, in August of 2017, and they passed it unanimously. They also provided a letter of support to the State Historic Preservation, written on August 15th, 2017, supporting all of the features listed, including the train, ice skating rink, museum, gift shop. And that brings us to this slide. The State Historic Preservation agreed, the next step was the State Historic Preservation, and they agreed to the concept and components, but they did not approve of the layout of the original design. They felt it was too crowded and took the focal point off of the carousel. So we created this new layout with them, and the city's engineering department drew it up for us. These engineered drawings show a less crowded design, leaving plenty of open space and keeping the carousel as the focal point. This drawing still includes a concession building, pavilion, a train building, the ice rink, a museum, and a gift shop office space. With all of the approvals, where do we go from here? We've held several fundraisers dedicating a portion to the grounds concept while continuing to raise much-needed funding for the carousel restoration. And we are no closer to starting the master plan now than we were in previous commission in 1991. Next year is our 125th anniversary. Yes, you heard that correct. That's 125 years. And we will have a concession building that, due to its current conditions, will remain closed all season. The same year we celebrate 125th anniversary, we turn away revenue from weddings, parties, company picnics, because we cannot accommodate their needs. When the carousel breaks down, we have nothing to offer the public, so we close with no other source of revenue. We have companies willing to sponsor the train. We do have a portable ice rink with all operational elements included in the package available to us. However, we're unable to fund any of the outbuildings on the landscape design plan. In July of 2019, when the request for capital funding was due, we did originally think of asking for funding to help secure the rink and install what was needed for it, as well as request funding to build the shell of the concession building, as we cannot afford the loss of revenue that will ensue if it remains closed. Since this submission, we've had many discussions regarding the buildings on our site plan and how we will be running utilities to each of those locations, driving the building costs up. We started to discuss the option for multi-purpose features and combining the space that we use. If we were to build one building that would house the concession stand, the gift shop and office space, as well as the garage space, formerly known as the train building, we would save money on site prep and building costs. If we were to move forward with the ice rink in the future, this element would not only be used in the winter, but it could be combined with the pavilion space, and we would rent that out in the spring, summer, and fall, making that feature year-round as well. We are hoping to avoid closure of the concession building, as this will cause a loss not only to the leaseholder but to the carousel as well. Combining these projects will also allow for substantial savings and allow for the Carousel Park Commission to continue moving forward with the previously approved projects to raise the much-needed revenues to support the carousel. Combining the projects also allows for maximum open space to remain for the various festivals and car shows we host each season. The new features would allow us to bring in additional activities to the grounds of the carousel that will help support the operations, as well as sponsorship opportunities to support the continuing restoration efforts. With the significant costs in Phase 2 of the stabilization project, we are looking to lessen the burden of the city, as we understand future capital funds will be tight in the very near future. As much as we would like to be able to give you a total build cost at this time, it's simply not possible. Once we have the approved funding, we'll immediately get to work on obtaining the new engineered drawings for the building with the help of the leaseholder. We would also like to meet with the Public Works Director to see if it's possible to have some of the site prep handled by the city employees, such as digging out the foundation and then backfilling before the cement pads are poured. We're investigating several avenues that will allow for cost savings, including a prefabricated building. If we find a wood building is required by the state preservation, we'd like to look into working with the East Providence Career and Technical School. With your help, we can build a structure that will not only keep the concession stand open and operating, but support the Carousel Park Commissioners and their tireless efforts to support the carousel for the long term. Once again, we thank you for your time this evening, and we're here and happy to answer any questions you might have.
I got a question. So Tracy, that building that would be built for Blount, it would be a multi-purpose building?
Correct. Can we go to slide,
And what is the, so I see the proposed cost for that is $150,000?
so the Blount portion of the building, or I like to keep it impersonal, the Clam Shack portion of the building would just be shell only, and they would be responsible to outfit the interior. That's everything from the floors to the ceiling, all of the kitchen equipment, tables, counters, windows, things like that.
How about utilities?
They already pay their own utilities and would continue to do so.
And as you said, the ice rink, it's not for the purchase of the rink, it's for the preparation.
Actually, the $100,000 would go towards whatever's remaining for the building to put in that office space. I was hoping he could pull up slide 16 just so I can show you that it's one building and kind of point out where things might go. So at one end of this building would be the Clam Shack. In the center would be a small office space, and then the opposing end would be the garage storage space. So the $100,000 first goes into getting that site prep finished, our portion of the building paid for, and whatever additional funds we would like to put down the cement pad, that would be a multi-feature. If we move forward with the ice skating rink, yes, that would go there, but it would also be used for pavilion space. In the beginning, it would need to be tented. So we would do seasonal tenting. That would allow for weddings, company picnics, and such. But that space is just continually utilized.
So correct me if I'm wrong. You're not looking at an ice skating rink.
We're not looking to purchase an ice skating rink.
Okay. So the $100,000 is preparation for what?
May I come over there?
Yeah, please.
Y'all are going to see the area, and I did it myself. It's for this one building.
Okay.
And
And
then-
then what is this? Is that?
That is a portion of this building. So originally, if we back up to, if we back up here, we had the Clam Shack, a pavilion, a museum, and actually we'll take it to the final approved plan,
But the amount you're requesting,
is going to build 3 of the features that are on the site plan.
and that's for $250?
If you combine the two, it would cover the costs.
So that's not only the structure, we're talking about utilities, water, gas lines, it's
Running all of the that was the site prep I kept talking about when it was 11 o'clock at night. It has to run all of, this is it, by the way, the original site plan was the restaurant, which is in the same location, the pavilion, which is up front, and the train building. There's also office space over here, but we're going to move it into this building. So we're looking to combine, actually there's the little office. We're looking to combine these 4 features into one building and one cement pad.
So would you hire an outside contractor for the site work?
That's where we were hoping to discuss with the Director of Public Works on what they could do first. And then, yes, we do have to go outside for anything that they're not able to help us with.
Mr. President, but we're saying we're not buying an ice rink, but in the capital budget book that we received, it says there is an opportunity to purchase an ice rink with cooling, freezing, including a Zamboni skate. So is there a purchase, or?
So at the time that the budget, the capital improvement budget is put together, they request that we submit it in July. I did receive that request late, and we brainstormed real quick what we would be submitting for. The original request was to utilize a small portion of that funding to do a down payment on the ice rink, with the additional going to the site prep and the little buildings. we no longer need to obtain the purchase price for the ice rink, and we'd like to combine it into this one building.
So we're going to do the prep work. The owner is going to provide the ice rink and the Zamboni and the rental skates and everything that comes with it.
I think that portion, I was actually going to request that portion be explained in executive session because it's a negotiating.
I can tell you that
I just want to know if we're buying it or not.
you're not buying it. It's actually going to end up being covered through a sponsorship.
Okay.
Where the city nor the preservation will be purchasing the ice rink.
And where do these numbers come from?
Brainstorming?
Okay. So we don't have any hard numbers?
Not yet. It's very difficult because there are portions of the project that will have to go out to prevailing wage, especially items that we cannot do ourselves. We can't get any hard numbers until we can put an RFP together, and we would need engineered drawings. I can tell you from the research I've been doing for the prefab buildings, you're looking at $14 to $16 for the low end and $30 per square foot. The building size would be 5,000 square feet.
And has the city taken a look at this from a perspective as to what type of work they can do and cannot do versus?
Not yet.
So this isn't for a vote tonight then, is it?
All the capital projects are for a vote tonight.
They could be.
Yes.
My only concern is we don't have any numbers. I mean, we have numbers, but they were just thrown off the top of our head.
No, we worked closely, like I've been speaking with Anthony Ferreira, who has provided a lot of insight to the project.
But you don't know what portions, or if the city could do the whole site work, right?
My understanding is they will not be able to do the whole site work. They will be able to dig it out. We'll have to get a forming company in to form it. And then we could maybe ask them to do the backfill for the foundation work. What we are curious to find out is if any of the utility lines could be dug out by the city. That would save us a portion of money.
So we're essentially looking at providing seed money, get it going, but it's open-ended as to what the total cost would be.
I wouldn't say that it's open-ended. I'd say that we will do our very best to fit it within the dollars provided to us, and we do have other avenues to get some additional funding after the fact.
But you need RFPs, you need bids, you need specs,
We need to get started.
It's got
and
to
we
be
can't-
specific.
Correct.
And that's inclusive to this money that you have already that you presented, permitting and everything else.
Correct.
So through the chair, if I could, I know David has been working with you on this project for a while in the Carousel Commission. David, do you mind coming up to provide the council with some information or insight?
Hi, I'm David Backrack, the Director of the Community Development Office. Some of these numbers actually have been rough estimates through the city engineer, and that's what we started with, is those rough estimates. It's still open-ended because we all know you go out for RFPs. There have been, ideas that a lot of the DPW heavy machinery can do site prep and so forth, but in any construction project, costs can fluctuate. However, it did all start with a city engineer quick estimate. Also, the cost of the ice skating rink, Zamboni, generator, everything to do, including ice skates for rentals, will be $0 to the city. And what's not included in this budget is significant sponsorships that the current owner of the ice skating rink estimates at close to $200,000. Now, I don't expect that to carry forward, but is a significant enough number to carry some weight. The current owner has pledged to stay in the game, so to speak, to leverage those sponsorships. And just in closing, the basic concept here is that over the years, we have leveraged grants with city capital improvement budgets for state historic preservation grants and so forth. This carousel is an expensive item for the city. And what we have before us is the foundations to create a sustainable revenue stream to take the carousel off of the city coffers. We'll be getting revenue stream from a lease from a restaurant/concession stand, but it's quite frankly close to a restaurant. We'll be generating funds from the ice skating rentals, sponsorships, lessons, so forth. And lastly, for the train rides. The revenues from all of this would be dedicated towards the preservation, upkeep of the carousel, which at this point in its life, we have addressed the foundation problems of the building, the exterior, all the way down to the windows and glazings, all through historic compliance. The last remaining item is to shore up the mechanical foundation and the mechanics, and now this building is set for a life of regular maintenance and occasional repairs as they come up. And in my perspective, this is our strategy to create this sustainable revenue source to then keep
Could you also use CBG for this as well?
No, I can't, because I have to document a 51% benefit to low and moderate income, and there's no way I can do that unless we check people's income on the way in.
The ice skating part of this, is this seasonal, year-round, or what is the schedule?
Well, the ice skating part is seasonal, but that cement pad has the potential of various dual functions. As Tracy mentioned, a pavilion for rentals. There can also be roller skating in the summer, fall, spring.
You said seasonal, you mean winter?
Yes.
So the carousel is closed, the Blount would be closed at the time that the skating is used?
No, I believe Blount would be open.
Okay.
So they would have a facility that they could be open. I think they might reduce their sales to, food to go and so forth. I don't know yet. I do know that they're extremely interested in this site. And that they're in a critical place for their presence there because they can't operate in the current concession stands that exist there now. The Department of Health won't allow them to open next season, though.
And because this is seasonal, has it been calculated for lighting, or is it properly lighting already in the area?
It's been calculated for lighting to be phased in later. Initially, we would open it seasonal without lighting, therefore it would...
But with the seasonal and daylight savings,
it would close earlier. We would hope with generated revenues that would be a secondary phase so that we could keep it open later. The ice skating portion, and again, in the summertime, if depending upon the timing and manpower, the roller skating, the other activities on the site.
I'm referring, I don't know if you answered my question or not.
I'm sorry.
But, ice skating, during the winter months, when it's daylight savings, is going to need some type of lighting.
Yes.
Has that been calculated in this number, or is there already lighting there that you don't need
There's
to?
ambient lighting there, but what's not calculated in this number is we would need much better lighting for that ice skating rink in seasons to come. And it's anticipated that if we have the profit margin and the carousels pretty much buttoned up, that we will be able to leverage that funding to do the lighting.
But for now, you have the lighting, for now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I do have a couple, and I don't know if they're questions as much as statements, because I don't know that we can answer them tonight. I think David and Tracy, I think you did a good job of pointing out the fact that the carousel is an expensive proposition to keep up and running here, and I think that everybody here wants to see it remain up and running. I think that there are additional operations and maintenance costs that are going to factor in, regardless of our initial capital expenditure. I think there is going to be an increased insurance bill. I think we are going to have to worry about things like securing the site so we don't have knuckleheads jumping onto the ice in the middle of the night when nobody's there. Those are kinds of things that I think we'll have to work through. And understanding that your eventual goal is to reduce or eliminate the allocation that the city has to provide for the council to remain a going concern. I think that a lot of those things are going to eat into the city's prospects for doing that. That said, me personally, I think it's one of those things that's worth a shot. I kind of feel like I think there's a lot of unknown here. I don't feel entirely comfortable kind of stepping out into that unknown. But when I look at the kind of, revenue and expenditures over the last several years, I don't see that situation getting any better without some action being taken. And I can't say, I'm a numbers guy, right? And I feel uncomfortable when I get outside of the numbers, especially when I'm spending taxpayers' money. I can't say I can look at all the numbers because obviously we don't have them and say this is a surefire proposition. I don't think it is. I think it's ultimately going to be more expensive than a lot of the stuff that we're looking at right now. But again, I find it hard to think that it's not worth a try, especially given that the initial expenditure is a capital expenditure. I think we're going to have to do some really hard work when it comes down to, if we're going to get this up and running the way that you're envisioning, we really are going to have to commit full-time staff to this, more than poor Tracy by herself, right? This is something that the city's going to write, which means we're going to have to take on benefits, we're going to have to take on pensions, we're going to have to take on all those things.
Actually,
I know you're saying no, but,
yeah.
Okay. Maintaining the grounds, keeping people off the grounds at night, things like that.
That with the current owners, we would erect a fence apparently that would take care of the night issues. Of course, somebody could scale the fence. And then I believe Tracy has figured out the manpower with her existing part-time.
Correct. So I would still, at this point, if we start bringing in lots and lots of money, because we have so many functions and festivities, we may have to address it. But to start off, I would still be the only full-time employee. It would be a part-timer and myself sharing the Monday through Friday work, and then it would be part-timers on the weekend.
Explain the skate rental part. Who's going to be doling out the skates? Someone we got to pay, right?
Correct. Someone who works part-time.
So already it would be a current employee that would do that.
Well, that depends. Our employees get hired annually, so you apply. I do always take returning staff first because you don't have to train them.
But they don't work in the winter, right?
Currently, right now, no. So we could hold over any staff that maybe is going to local college that comes home on weekends, or is local and lives at home, so they could do evening work after classes, or we would have to do a separate hire.
And 100% of the rental fees come to the city, to the carousel?
Depending on how everything works out, you cover all of your expenses first, and then I believe the commission's goal is once expenses are covered, that's everything from utilities, everything that we
Sure, local expenses, right.
Correct.
But not, what is the owner getting from this, the person who owns the ice rink?
The Carousel Park
sponsorship
Commission,
fees, right.
and actually the city would become the new owner of the rink.
The sponsorship fees go to who?
The carousel.
So it's a gift from the owner of the rink, and the Zamboni, and
I think
Well, it's
that's
a
something she
sponsor.
can't...
It's a sponsorship.
I know the owner, I'm not going to say it, but I'm just... Okay.
There's been verbal commitments.
The idea is to try to see if the carousel could be eventually self-sustainable. You know, it's an old building, and as we know, we keep putting money into it as needed, but that's the idea. Also would bring interest to that part of Riverside. We already have the carousel, but just one more addition to that area.
That's the point, right? I think that's a key point for people to, right? If our goal is to make the thing ultimately self-sustainable,
Right.
there's a number, right? There's an investment that has to be made.
Right.
I think that the investment is higher than the one that we've talked about, but again, like I said, we have to move in some direction if that's our goal, right? Sitting on it is not going to make it
Right.
self-sustainable.
So, and are you looking to do all this at one time, or to do it in stages or phases?
We're looking to put the building up at one time to save us the most amount of money. That cement
That's the
pad-
clam shack, right?
That's the clam shack with the office and gift shop space in the middle with the storage garage on the end. That needs to be done in one piece. The additional cement pad, if we had to wait on that, we could. Winter's already coming for this year.
So in the event that the building comes in at 200,000 as opposed to the 150,000, does the other 50,000 come from the 100,000 you're requesting for
Yes.
the ice skating pad? So then it's a domino effect. So at some point in time, you're going to need an additional $50,000, using that as an example.
When we look at 250,000 total, we believe, fingers crossed, that that will get us the building and the cement pad.
But what I'm saying is, if you're saying that the ice pad is going to be 100,000,
We're not saying that the ice pad is 100,000.
what are you saying it's going to be?
To pour the concrete pad, what would you say?
I'm looking at, you said you needed 250, right? When you combine the two right here outside of the structure, it's 250.
Correct. And that
Okay.
builds the full structure.
Right.
And we're hoping to also put down the cement pad, like it's combined.
But in an event that number, because this is a guesstimate, these aren't hard numbers, and if I'm not mistaken, these numbers were given how long ago?
They were given about 8 months ago.
Oh, okay, this year, so within a
And
year.
I think the concept is to start the revenue stream within the building first. And then if there is any type of net profit, that goes towards the next phase of implementing
Okay.
the concrete pad, which will then provide us the opportunity to generate the other element that would generate revenue stream, the ice skating rink, and so forth.
So is there a way that we could figure out how much work the city can do versus what's going to go out for an RFP?
Sure,
I don't think he's going to have the numbers now with it, but I'm saying...
No, but what we'll do is, since we have the specifications for the ice skating rink and we have the rough requirements of the building, we can sit down with engineering and the DPW and try to get more firm numbers.
Okay, because I just feel like it's going to be more than what you have.
Yes, it seems everything ends up that way, the best of planning.
I don't have any further questions.
I just want to add that I think, and I've said this, I think before, I think it's important that we invest in things in the city, this being something that has set hard feet in the city that, you know, the community for decades loves, has used, and it is a costly attraction to the city, but with that comes enjoyment and growth and pleasure. And I think that if we don't put money into it like a business, you're not going to get the return on it. So if we just leave it as the status quo, it's going to continue to need a lot of money to fix and maintain, just in the nature of what it is. As you know, those horses are very expensive, the tails, I mean, everything that goes into it is very expensive. So if we don't expand that property and expand that entertainment for the public and draw people into the city to utilize that, we're going to end up losing that eventually down the line, because it's not going to be able to sustain itself. The city's not going to be able to sustain it independently, or it's going to have to put a lot of its resources in. So much like other projects, if you put, the upfront money is going to be a little bit, and we expect that, and we acknowledge that, but then the return is going to be, 2, 3, 5-fold on that, not only in terms of it being self-sufficient, because hopefully the idea is to continue to expand within reason, and then it'll pay for itself, and the community will enjoy it. It'll bring people from outside of the community, which we know will then bring them having to go through the city, which will show them other things in the city that will generate more revenue for the city. So I know some of the council members, the money, not knowing exactly how much things are going to cost, but they also have their own the Carousel Council or committee that fundraises and has money set aside. So they are too obligated to make up for any of that, and I'm sure that that's a priority for them. They just need a little bit of extra help to get there. So I feel confident that what they're asking for, anything above that, they know that they have to come up with to keep that project going, to finish it to where it needs to be. And that's not to say down the line they're not coming back to ask for more expansion, but I think much like everything else in the city, if we don't invest into our infrastructure, which we really don't have a great deal of other than public buildings, then we're not going to, it's just going to crumble, and we won't be doing the community the service that it deserves, much like schools, going down the, looking back at how that has been taken care of. So I think it's a little difficult at first with all the different stuff that comes across here to put out, but in the end, I think that they have a great vision, the committee. We put a lot of trust in them. And they do have an open communication. I hope that they would continue to do so, to keep the council apprised at how much they're spending, where they are, so that way we can feel confident that the decisions we're making or plan to make that are justified by what they're doing with it.
Can I get a copy when you get an opportunity of that expense report that you had presented? I mean, I'm all for this, and I understand it's good for the carousel, but I just think the numbers are going to come in a lot more higher, I would say, and I would like to see it more done in stages as opposed to one big project. That way you have a little more control over your finances, number one, and number two, you have more control over, the actual build-out of what you're doing.
Just to clarify, the items, like the features, say the train, the ice skating rink, things like that, those definitely will be implemented one at a time. The building itself, though, I'm not a builder, so I could be wrong. You have to build the building at one time.
And I understand that. I mean, you're not going to build a building in stages. So I would like to see, for an example, that building built first, for an example.
I have no problem with that.
I mean, that would be my first, as opposed to the building, the pad, and the pavilion and all these other things. I would like to see the building, for an example, built first.
Right, and I believe that is the
And even
plan.
if we allocate the money aside, it doesn't necessarily that we're going to be using it, but we can always allocate it in the event that it does come in under or at, I mean, at least we know. Because right now it's a guessing game right now. And for any investor, if you were to go to anybody to invest in this, they would say, okay, show me the numbers, is essentially what they would do. And you have to give them hard numbers, not only the soft costs, but you'd have to give them the hard costs as well. And that's what we don't see here. We don't see the true numbers. And I'm trying to get around by saying that I wouldn't mind seeing a portion of this, if we start off with the building, for an example, and let's see where it comes in once an RFP is submitted.
So I feel a little bit differently, and I understand your point, and I actually can't believe it's me kind of making this argument, but if I'm thinking through an ongoing negotiation with somebody who is potentially going to come in and lay down an actual ice skating rink, right, in anticipation of some kind of proceeds, I think they want some kind of security that we're going to be ready and we're going to be prepared to make that deal. To me, I think if we don't have city support for the concrete pad itself, you're going to lose a lot of leverage in that negotiation. And maybe all of it. I don't know. I'm not privy to what's going on in there. But I know that if I were the other party and I was looking at that and saying, well, your council doesn't really even support this, maybe we'll go talk to Cranston or Pawtucket or somebody else. I'm kind of feeling like, we've got to kind of go for the whole thing or nothing is where my gut is telling me.
Also, everything we're talking about tonight has nothing to do with monies we're going to need for restoration of the physical roof carousel itself, right? And that's hundreds of thousands of dollars ahead. From the meetings I've went to and listened and watched, there's a lot of repair work. We approved the other night the initial, was it $50,000 for start the structural stabilization phase 1. That's a drop in the bucket, right? So you got to have a lot of ice skate rentals to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars to fix the carousel. So we need to do both. I agree, it's no one in the city's against the carousel. I lived adjacent to it for 21 years. Not there now, but I did, and I know the value of it, and I support it. But I also have yet to vote on anything without bids and firm numbers, and I'm leaning towards supporting this with seed money, but with the realization that it's going to cost a lot of money down the line, and it's not arguable. This seed money is just going to get this started, and I can't make any future commitment to expend hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars if it comes to the point that we need that, if that makes any sense.
I don't know if this helps answer Council President's question. We were just given a rough estimate number of $20,000 for that cement pad. And that's given if the Director of Public Works will do the same for the building as he does for the pad, which would be to dig it out level. We'll have the forms put in. Then it would have to be backfilled, and the company would put the cement in.
And that sounds, reasonable, but I think people would have to agree that anyone who's built a house, a garage, a shed, you get a price. You don't just call up the contractor and say, what do you think? And the contractor says, I think I could build your house for $100,000. All right, go ahead, build it. And then you get the bill for $300,000. Everybody has a bid, especially, I think, as a city, we have to. You have to have RFPs, you have to have a bid, you have to have it done legally.
And I would love nothing more than to get the process started for the engineered drawings and go out to RFP so that I could bring you back firm numbers.
I don't think they can get an RFP without the actual money allocated to that project, correct?
Correct.
So we're working off estimates with pretty much every single project on this capital improvements. But I feel confident enough that the Carousel Committee has done extensive work and research to at least get us to some numbers that is a good estimate versus, some of these, as we're going to discuss later on in other meetings, some of these capital improvement projects, I'm wondering where did they get that number from? And we may get that answer. But right now, I think that this committee has worked hard in doing their due diligence and work and research to at least get us to this point.
Okay, so to move this along, Councilman Murata, you put it on the agenda. We have capital projects report. What are we voting on tonight? What is the number?
So I would like to make a motion, and, we can put this off, we can talk about it now. I think we already beat these three items.
Yeah, make the motion. Make the motion.
I would like to make a motion. First of all, the first phase has already been approved at the previous council meeting.
50,000.
Correct.
So tonight, I would like to make a motion to approve the ice rink and the concession stand for a vote. I'd like to make a motion for a vote.
And I'd like to,
In the amount
hold on.
Hold on. I'd like, if I may, through the chair, can I ask for unanimous consent to move that vote up in the agenda to now?
Oh, okay.
Excuse me?
I'd like to, so that comes in the agenda later on the docket.
Okay.
So I'd like to move that up for a vote now.
I'd second that.
Yeah, I agree.
We take a vote across the board on that?
I don't think we need to vote on that. Could you-
Yes, for unanimous consent.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so that's, I'm fine.
Mr.
I'm fine with
Morano's
that as
motion
well.
still stand?
Correct. And the ice rink, that's proposed request for $100,000, and the year-round concession building, which is $150,000.
So I'd like to second that. I'd like to add the point that we can always, as a city, make a conscious decision to walk away from the carousel, right? It's not a school, right? We're not by law committed to maintain the carousel. What we can't do is let it get to a point where it's gone and then bring it back, right? And I think if you look across the city, if you were to gauge the sentiment of the city, I think people would much rather have it here than to have it gone. So, in that vein, I second it. Again, I think it's going to cost us a lot of money in the long run, but I think going across the city, I think the sentiment is there that that's something we want to keep and invest in.
So we have a motion on the floor to approval of the $250,000, and that's for the ice skate rink pad, right? The pad, and for the year-round concession building. Okay, and the pad is a concrete pad. It's just a pad. Do we have any dimensions on it, or we don't?
The pad itself would need to be 110 by 100.
110 by 100, okay. Is that good with you, Councilman, on your motion? Because that's
Yes,
what you're voting on. Okay. Madam Clerk?
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morado.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Aye. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
So,
Thanks. Hey, good luck.
Thank you very, very much.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, we get it.
make it.
Thanks for coming. Appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
Thanks, good luck.
All right, so we just want to move right along here. We want to move right along here. We would like to move right along here so we can have an early night. Thank you. Thank you all, and good luck. All right, so we're going to move right along. We're still on the council communications, and we're going to go to Thanksgiving food drive for East Providence family. Councilwoman Souza.
Yes, thank you. I don't know. Oh, where's our IT gentleman for our flyer? So, Thanksgiving is coming. We're now approaching the month of November. We're reaching our holiday season. As you know, many organizations throughout the city reach out for families in need. I am starting, along with the council, a giving thanks food drive for families in our community that may not have Thanksgiving or not as fortunate as others. That also includes group homes and other low income in the community. So if anybody knows of anybody that needs some assistance come the holiday season in terms of meals, holiday meals, please reach out to myself or the city clerk, and she will forward the message to me. There's going to be boxes set up throughout the city, so City Hall in front of the council chambers. There'll be a food box, a Thanksgiving food box. There'll be some at the police station, the libraries. I believe DPW is also okay with us using their location. So various spots throughout the community that you can drop some non-perishable items that will be collected and distributed to families in need throughout our community.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Is that for information only, or?
I'm sorry?
Is that for information? Did you need a?
Nope, that's just a publication, yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that effort.
So one of the things we failed to go over early on in the docket is public comment, and unfortunately, but because it is here and there are some names on here, I'm going to call up Mr. Smith, George Smith, if he hasn't taken off by now, which I'm sure he did, and Jessica Boucher was the other, which I don't see her
She
here.
might be out in the hallway.
Okay, so in the event that she does come back in, we can call her up to express what she needs to. Other than that, I'm going to ask Madam Clerk if we can...
Mr. Director, is Jessica Boucher out there? No? Okay, thank you.
So, Madam
Mr.
Clerk...
I'm sorry, are there other communications?
No, that's it. Those are the only two.
Is next would be ordinances. I know that I see at least the department head here, Mr. Kudo, and I know that there are a couple of capital projects. We won't be going through them all, but there are a couple I want to, and I'm sure he's here to speak on those. So rather than have him wait, if we could...
And we also have Officer Muggles here.
There's Officer Muggles here, too. So if we could do... These seem to be pretty pro forma resolutions relating to the, budget and some other things that we could do quickly toward the end of the meeting.
Okay.
So if I could ask consent to go to the page 47 of the budget book, the capital projects.
Do we not want to just go ahead and do the first passage with Officer Muddle, since he's here?
Yeah, the first...
Oh, okay.
Well, actually, it should be second passage, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, all right. Okay. So if we could just...
That's fine.
Councilman,
Sure.
if you don't mind, just proceeding in the order that we have for ordinance first passage.
Sure.
For ordinance, I'm not sure if Officer Muggles want to come up and speak on behalf of the ordinance, or if he was just here to listen to what we have to say about it, but...
It's going to keep the animals away from the carousel.
Please.
Council President, just so to inform the council, so over the last couple of months, the council's been working on this ordinance very diligently, is sponsored by you, and with input from other council members, including Councilwoman Souza. What we did was, because there was a little confusion as to all the changes that were made over the last two meetings, one which I was here, one which the assistant solicitor was, we just kind of listened to the tape and we put together what we considered all the changes, the comprehensive changes that were made by the council. After that was done, I did forward a copy to you and to, I think to everyone maybe, and to Officer Muggles, who then went through it with me from one last time. So what's here before you now is exactly all the changes that you have made as a collective body that you have voted on. Having done that, we believe that there might be some confusion as to what the meaning of the ordinance was and what some of the changes, some of the deletions that were made. So Officer Muggles is here to advocate for some of the deletions to be put back in. So we can go through page by page if you want to, and I'll show you where the...
No, I think, we had a full lengthy conversation about this, so I think we should just go to those line items or items that were in question. However, if I'm not mistaken, we did vote the first time, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you remove that vote if it went through first passage with amendments?
Because there were amendments on the second night as well with Dylan, and then because the charter says you go back to first passage when you make changes.
Okay.
I think what happened was the changes weren't, for the second meeting, the changes weren't on It's like, I think the original one came back for second passage, and the changes were not on there.
Right, but I thought the record would speak for itself at that point in time, that whatever was amended during that first discussion that we have on the ordinance is part of the records, and it stays as
And
a
then you
record.
made changes, additional
And then we made
changes.
additional changes, right.
which goes back to the first
First
passage.
passage.
Okay.
So the cover sheet is nothing, and we'll reflect, if you make changes, the Article 1, we'll just update the table of contents.
So I think the discussion is going forward with respect to this ordinance is not so much as what's already on there, is what was amended.
Okay.
So if we could just stick with what was amended, because we had already discussed and talked about everything
So
else.
Section 3.7.
And it was agreed upon with everybody else, if we want to just go forward with.
So one of the deletions that were made, if you look at Section 3.7, impounding, reclaiming, and destroying of animals. So the council voted to delete that section, and Officer Buggles had some comments, as well as I do, about the deletion of what deleting that section actually means. But go ahead.
So under 3.7, I think part of the issue was that it does speak to destroying of animals, kind of an archaic term to use, but, however, that section actually gives us the authority to impound animals other than dogs and cats. Cats are actually under a different section of state law that we are empowered to impound if they're at large. This section gives us the ability to impound animals other than cats and dogs. So if there are, a loose chicken or ferret or guinea pig or any other type of animal, if we were to remove that whole section, that would remove that authority to do that.
But it talked about destroying animals. I mean,
Right, so
we can always strike.
So I think the other issue with that too is that we do have to have the legal ability to put animals to sleep if they're suffering or too aggressive to adopt out and things like that. We have to have that legal authority to do that. Like I said, that the terminology isn't great in here, but ultimately the authority to be able to do that when we need to has to be there. Otherwise, we kind of open ourselves to being in a situation where we have to act in the best interest of the animal, but we'd be breaking the law.
And who euthanized the animal? Is it?
It would be a veterinarian. Yeah, we don't euthanize except in emergency cases. On scene, if it's a matter of an animal that's suffering, that we feel that transporting it to, or if it's a wild animal that we can't transport to a vet clinic to get treatment, that the best course of action is to euthanize it on scene. Sometimes like a deer, for example, that gets hit by a car, you're not going to be able to bring that to a veterinarian. And so on scene, unfortunately, that's something that...
And how many animals have been euthanized other than...
as far as wild animals?
No, say dogs or cats.
In total, our euthanasia rate is extremely low, and that's part of the reason why we've actually, advocated for some of the changes in here so that we can keep those numbers low, beyond my tenure or, into the future, that our practices are something that are maintained so that our euthanasia rates remain low. Last year, or this year, we've had intake of 268 animals, of which we've only had to euthanize 4 dogs and 6 cats, and all of those were due to injury, like a cat being struck by a vehicle.
They're all related to injuries.
They're all related to injuries, but 2 were dogs that were extremely aggressive. And then the previous year, the figures for dogs were even lower. We had to euthanize 3 dogs. So for a shelter that takes in, last year we had 362 animals in total. That's a very low number.
So, Council President, under Section 3.7, this gives the authority of the animal control officer to impound other animals other than cats and dogs. So, in other words, if there's a loose pig, he needs the authority to grab it. And if we get rid of this section, he won't have that authority, so we need to restore that. It's current ordinance.
Well, it's good that he's here to explain it.
Yes.
I mean, we didn't have this explanation the first time around.
I think this was struck on the second time. Not the first time.
It was, however, the request for what the department head was the first time.
So the question I have on this section is C, where it says any animal other than a dog impounded under the provision of this chapter and not claimed by its owner within 5 days may be humanely destroyed by the animal control officer. So
So again, that's just the authority to do that. It doesn't mean that we have to do that, and we generally don't. We don't have there's a legal holding period under state law that does the same thing. It actually mimics this law, or actually this law mimics that law. The wording is the same. So there's a period of time that we have to hold an animal, and that's giving us a minimum time period that we have to hold it. But then after that, we have the options. All the options are available. Adopting it out, transferring it to another place, or euthanizing it. That is one of the options. It's just the one that we, being strongly advocating for animals, we use that as a last resort measure, and we try our best to never use that, whenever it's possible.
Okay. So if I could, since this is first passage, just on this section titling, instead of it saying destroying animals, can we replace that with euthanizing of animals, just so it doesn't sound so morbid?
Well, someone needs to make a motion to, if the council's intention, to undelete this section first, and then you can make the change.
So are we going to go section by section, or are we going to go?
There's only a couple sections that need to be.
Okay, so you want to just go section by section?
I'm not discussing the ones that you already approved, and
Okay.
I'm only discussing the ones that were troublesome once they were deleted.
Mr. President,
I'm referring to just those sections. Yeah.
I would move that we restore Section 3.7, and that the wording be switched to euthanizing instead of destroying.
Okay.
Make that a motion.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morado.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Aye. Next section, please.
Second passage for vote, public hearing, ordinance.
No,
Sorry.
section.
Section 321 is utilization.
This section was...
What's the number again,
I'm
please?
sorry, section 3-21.
So this section was removed. This was euthanization, it says in here, by lethal injection only. What the intent of this law was when it was passed originally was that there were still gas chambers in use back then. So the intent here was to stop disuse, stop the use of gas chambers, which fortunately I never had to use in my career. But the wording of this is to make it so that the animals that are euthanized have to be euthanized by lethal injection, which is the general use of manner of euthanizing an animal at a vet clinic. So this is mandating basically that we have to take it to a vet and have it euthanized humanely by a veterinarian.
So this limits the authority of the animal control officer to kill a dog, to euthanize an animal other than by they can only use lethal injection through a veterinarian. By striking that, it means that you can do anything.
So except for the last section.
Just for limiting language.
Except for the last sentence that says in an emergency situation.
Correct.
Which, in an emergency situation, can you give me an example of what would be an emergency?
Again, it would be like having because this covers all animals, but having a deer that's struck by an animal, a police officer on scene sometimes has to put the animal out of its suffering.
Yeah, suffering, okay.
And then he would have to utilize a firearm for that.
It happens at teachers all the time.
An injection is the standard. I know I've had pets in the past,
Right,
and
it's
it was
standard
injection.
used by the veterinarian.
Right.
To when someone goes to have their animal put to sleep, it's the same.
Mr. President, I would move to restore Section 3-21, euthanization by lethal injection only.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morado.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Council President Brito.
Aye, thank you. Next section, please.
3-24, minimum care of animals.
I actually have page 22 on the first.
Animal pound.
Animal pound, is that something we needed to cover?
We changed it back to animal pound. It was the animal shelter.
Oh, okay.
As amended, but it's a different standard for animal shelters. When the city or town has an animal pound, it is a pound. Animal shelters are governed under a different statute. So when a city or town holds an animal, it's by statute it's called a pound. So that remains the same. It was just a word change. So we're going back to the original pound. It was originally meant to say shelter.
So do they operate differently?
Right, so there's a definition under state law that we apply to the state for our pound license, and that's the definition that, we fall under the definition of a pound under state law. So we wouldn't be able to be called a shelter.
Only cities and towns can be pounds.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, 3-24 is minimum care of animals. This is existing law that was stricken, and Officer Muggles could probably explain the sort of history behind that, but by striking it, you basically took away the minimum standards of which people are supposed to care for the animals. So it's a minimum standard that he can enforce. Without that, he has no minimum standard to which he can enforce, so it's a free-for-all again.
No.
So that section was put in place so that we have something to go with when we go on scene to a neglect case, or when there's a dog left outside overnight in the cold, in the rain. We have this as a tool to go, though it's minimum care. What it is, it's just creating a standard where they have to meet these minimums, otherwise they're in violation of the law. So we had this put in place so that we would have the tools available to us to stop that, the mistreatment of animals.
Yeah, I'm not sure why this would have been stricken. I don't recall this, but I make a motion to reinstate.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Councilman Cahoon?
Aye.
Councilman Morato?
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza?
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick?
Aye.
And Council President Brito?
Aye. Thank you.
Section 3-26.
This is the last section, right?
It is, yes. Double I was stricken, and I believe that's go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's the same principle with they're giving us the authority to euthanize. And actually, in this case, this is put the wording on this. I'm sorry.
Disposition?
Thank you. Yep. So this is when an animal is seized, that we would have to provide the animal back to the owner unless this condition is in place. So one of the conditions is if the animal is euthanized for humane reasons, we obviously wouldn't, if the animal is suffering and we have to put it to sleep, we obviously wouldn't have to give the animal back to the owner, in that case. So that's basically striking that. We wouldn't be able to, if the animal is suffering, we wouldn't be able to put it to sleep and relieve its suffering at that point with this stricken.
So can you give me a scenario of this?
I guess if we had impounded an animal that was being mistreated and it's part of an animal cruelty case, we have it at the shelter, and because of the cruelty that is sustained, the animal's in too poor of shape, that we take to the veterinarian, and the veterinarian says this animal is suffering, and in the condition that it's in, I, as a veterinarian, believe that it needs to be humanely euthanized. We wouldn't be able to do that if this is stricken. So even though the vet recommends it because that animal is suffering because of that person's actions, we wouldn't be able to do it. Or if we did, we'd potentially be open to liability to the owner.
So who covers the cost if the city decides to euthanize?
All of this at the bottom, I believe it's of that section, it actually has in there that these are all items that the owner of the animal would be responsible for. So the care of the animal, while it's in our care, euthanizing the animal, if that had to be, if that was necessary, any vet bills, things like that, all falls back on the owner.
Even if the owner decides that that's not what they want to be done?
Right, so that this is in place because we had to seize the animal enforcement of some law or court order for some reason. Generally, it's because the animal's being mistreated. So we're taking that animal from them, that's their property. So we have to have some of these safeguards in place for the city, so that we can make these decisions for the animal and advocate for them.
So what happens in a situation where somebody's walking their dog and their dog maybe attacks another dog accidentally, or a person? Typically, the dog will get seized, right?
Right. Yep. It depends on the situation, but there is a potential for it to be seized if it's not currently rabies vaccinated, or if it was a vicious attack.
And then the owner. So this will then give the dog pound the authority to do.
What it would do is if the animal, let's say that does happen, and there's something where a veterinarian, for humane reasons, decides this animal needs to be put to sleep, that we would potentially have the authority to euthanize that animal if we had the recommendation from a vet that is a humane thing to do. I've never come across a case that happened, but yeah, that's covering that sort of.
And you would not have to return the euthanized animal to the...
Well, it depends on the scenario, but, if they wanted the remains, we would obviously generally provide that. I mean, unless it's an abuse case, then we probably wouldn't want to provide that to them, so.
Who makes those decisions? Would it be you? Would it be whoever the dog officer is to return? Because in here it says that you would not be returned.
It would depend on what it was seized for.
Mm-hmm.
So some of it is dictated by law. What the animal was seized for and what conditions they have to provide for the dog to be returned. So, in some cases it'll be, they have to get the dog rabies vaccinated, or it has to go through a quarantine period, or we have to have a vicious dog hearing. There's a slew of different conditions that may have to be met depending on which law we're talking about.
What number is that? Mr. President, I would move restoration of 3-26?
Mm-hmm.
AII.
AII, 3-26, AII would move its reinstatement.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Aye. Thank you. That concludes this ordinance at this point in time. Officer Muggles, thank you for coming up and taking the time to explain those.
Thank you very
those
much.
sections to us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
President, I would ask consent of the council to go to the capital projects, capital budget recommendations.
Do we have to take a vote for first passage of that ordinance, having finished it?
I thought you just did.
we did.
I thought we just
the sections we
reinstated
did.
that last, okay, but
Is that, I hear what you're
The
saying.
ordinance
Yeah,
as a whole.
that was
Oh, I
just as a
thought it was-
whole,
I'm-
not the
I'm-
sections.
I'm
We
sorry.
just voted on the sections.
I thought you were voting on the whole thing.
Right, so,
move to approve for first passage the ordinance as amended for our
Okay.
discussion.
Second.
Second.
all right. Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Council President Brito.
Aye, thank you. Councilman, you want...
I'd like to have consent to go to the capital budget recommendations. Is that okay to everyone?
Okay with me.
At the pleasure of the council, I have no problems.
We left off most of these at our final budget hearing as we approached midnight, and it seemed to be a better idea to take time over the next couple of meetings. I have particular interest in 2 or 3, and then I'll follow the council's movement on other items. But for me, along the lines of the importance of the carousel to the city and other areas like that, are some of the recreation and parks areas that we have. And on certain given days, there can be as many as 15,000 people at Pierce Stadium. We know what the concerts are like, the fireworks are like, and sporting events. And through the years, we've let the stadium go. I think we're on the road a little bit to getting it back. But if we're talking about a facility that the city has been known for since its inception, and the stadium gates built by the workers, the WPA, Workers Project Administration, it's Pierce Field. I still have, and I'll end my narrative with this, I still have letters at home that were sent to me and to when my dad was involved in Little League in the 60s, when New England tournaments were held here, and they praised Pierce Stadium as the best facility they had ever seen. And it's remained that through most of the years. It's got gotten a little tired, needs some work. We have the money available to do this, and the first project I'd like to talk about is the baseball side of the stadium. And I know I see Director Diane is here, so if it's okay, if she could come forward if I had any questions or if she had any comments, and also Steve Cruder was here. But she's done a wonderful job since being a recreation director and getting it back to the way that it should be. The football side has been kind of restored, although I know there's other work that's going to be there. But I don't want to see us go 2, maybe 3 years in a row now without a baseball stadium scoreboard, without a public address system, and with the fencing that has come apart that needs to be replaced. I know in the past it was scheduled to be done, and it didn't get done, and now we do have it. A couple of the items are here, and I think you've heard me talk about this before, so I'm not going to get off some muggles leave. I'm not going to beat a dead horse here. But no euthanizing of that. So the first item is the baseball scoreboard sound system. It looks like they have allocated $45,000. I know that the Rhode Island Interscholastic League doesn't want to come here anymore because you can't have a game without a scoreboard and without announcing players. And we recently got the bathrooms fixed. That took a while. So I would like to see that project finally come to fruition. If we don't do it now, we're going to lose another year because we're almost at winter.
Okay.
And you got to get this stuff ordered now. The RFPs, I think, have actually been done. And if they were stalled and they need to be done again, then they need to do it. But you can't do this when snow's on the ground. And baseball starts up around March. And I'm not going to be happy if we have to wait another whole cycle, another whole year, and disrespect that stadium and the youth that use it.
So I have a question, if I may. As you know, I've always advocated for this field too, being in my ward. Walked it thousands of times, looking at all the stuff that was falling apart, and tried to start last year or 18 months ago on fixing it and allocating some money, which we were able to. But as Council Roderick says, there's so much work that needs to be done. It's a matter of, I guess, prioritizing some of the work. My question is this the scoreboard? Is that going the one that has right behind the main office, where it has the dugout, not the dugout, but the announcer's box, so to speak? Is that the field? Because there's multiple fields, and I'm not sure which one.
No, this is the big stadium, the big baseball stadium. The scoreboard is behind the right field fence area. It's not working. And there is a sponsor's name on it, but I've researched that, and that sponsor hasn't paid anything in over 10 years. They originally helped to build it. They may have even purchased it.
Right.
But their commitment is completed, and it now doesn't work. There are some smaller scoreboards you might be thinking about in the Little League fields, but the Little League provided those.
Yeah.
They're not city provided. There's 2 city provided scoreboards, the football field and the big baseball field.
So is that the Little League right when we walk into the behind that has the box? Is that facing a Little League field, or is that the large field?
I'm not sure I know what you mean.
Across from the basketball courts, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the brick building, where right behind that is the big field I'm talking about.
Because if you go into the building, go up the stairs, the second floor, there's an announcement box.
Right. That's where the PA system would go.
Right.
The scoreboard is in the outfield.
Right, that's what I was mentioning.
Okay.
That's the field.
That's the field, the big one.
Because I know that box needed quite some attention.
Right.
Itself. But, okay, just wanted to...
So, and, Diane, I don't know if I described it well, but if that's pretty much the story as you see it.
So, Councilman, I don't need either director to come up and speak for or against this, because this was on my original list for approval anyway, so...
Can I make a
I'm with you
suggestion,
on this.
Mr. Chair? We have a lot of items on this list still to discuss, and I think we pretty much have a feeling for what we could get out of the way, like, vote on. And then there are some other items.
That's what I'm doing. I'm picking on the 2 or 3 that I have prioritized, and then the rest of the council can...
And there's some that are questionable, and, we're going to have questions on. My recommendation, if the council was in agreement, that if we can knock some of those out.
Keep in mind also, we have second passage for ordinances as well.
And that's the other reason why. We have a thick...
Right, so I'm ready to go. I move approval of the Piercefield Baseball Scoreboard Sound System project in the amount of $45,000.
Second.
All right. Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Aye. Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you, Mr. President. My second area would be the DPW Parks Riverside Recreation Complex. I think this was the area where we had the discussion about the parking lot behind Riverside Middle School and extending the field. Again, I've been involved in that area since the 1980s, and Somerset Avenue and all those streets that go down to Riverside Rec are just inundated with cars parking. I drove by there tonight on my way here. I think the junior townies were practicing football, and both sides of all streets had cars lined up, and there was a homeowner. I took a picture, but I didn't have time to get it put on the display. A couple homeowners have put sawhorses across their driveways that say no parking because they can't get in and out of their house and their driveway. So this seems to me to be a no-brainer to possibly even eliminate the street parking and put this parking lot in scaled down, as I think the mayor described the program before was a massive parking lot. This one's a little smaller, and also extending that field. And there was $100,000 set aside from the capital funds. I don't see a problem, and to me, it's a no-brainer. It solves a problem that has been in Riverside, at the Riverside Rec forever.
I agree with you, Councilman Rodrick. However, my only reservation is that the previous capital improvement projects, there's still $250,000 outstanding that haven't been utilized for that purpose. And in addition, as the mayor has indicated, the initial parking lot plans have been scaled back dramatically. As you recall, he called it a Walmart parking lot, and now it's been scaled back. So common sense would tell me that there's going to be additional cost savings to not going as big as they initially thought. And I agree with you, that is a constant problem even when my kids played Riverside Raiders football and soccer. What I would like to see is that money that was allocated in the last council utilized for that purpose first, and then revisiting this down the road.
Well, where is that money?
According to the Malcolm's printout, it's still sitting there. It has not been.
So I don't care where it comes from. Let's just get this done. Can the motion say the money comes from the last year's account?
So I think the issue, right, I think the issue is, is that to the conversation that we've been having is there are multiple projects that have been allocated and they're not doing the projects or haven't started the project. So that right there is really.
So what's the remedy?
So
up to the mayor's office.
I wouldn't want to potentially vote on this and have it turned down or whatnot. I would like to table it and see where in a month or so, whatever, if there's a plan to utilize that previous allocated money towards that project.
Knowing that in a month or so, we won't be able to do work with the winter.
Well, but they would be able to get off RFPs and let us know where they stand on that project for the spring.
Steve. Mr. Kudo?
President Shaft? I feel underdressed. You guys look great, by the way. A little bit of history for that particular project, okay? We did go out to bid for the parking lot, okay? And that was the number, to $250,000. New administration came in, they put a halt on the parking lot idea, wanted to do a parking lot plus field, which was going to require actually more clearing, hence the need for an additional $100,000. So it's scaled down parking lot, parking area, but with an additional field space.
So this money really is to do additional field space, essentially.
Correct. Right, to add parking and field
So
space.
parking we've already allocated, it's additional field space is where this 100,000 is coming into play. My concern with that project as a whole is I think that whole place needs a little bit of extra attention. So I'd like to see an overall plan for that area in general instead of kind of cherry picking area. Like the parking, we know that's been an issue. That's why it was approved at the last council. Now, if we're going to introduce new fields, which I don't have a problem with making it better, but you can't just fix one section and then neglect the rest of the facility, and then maybe go down the line. I'd rather it just be done as a whole comprehensive repair instead of doing it piece by piece.
Mr. Director, when did that go out for bid? Because this was approved, that money was approved
It goes back a
2016.
ways, yeah. It was over like last year.
And that money's still sitting there, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, because the capital monies stay, and they stay for that project unless council, my understanding, redirects it to another project.
So we have to start somewhere, right? Why wouldn't we start with taking care of the neighborhood's parking problems?
And that's what they have the money for. That's my point.
They have the money for the whole thing. They've got the 250 from before.
Right.
This 100,000 is to add another field.
And parking.
No, the parking has already
Well, it
been
says-
allocated. That parking situation has already been allocated.
So what's been allocated right now, as Mr. Kudu said, they went out with an additional, there was an initial allocation to cover for a parking lot. They went out for bid, found out that it was more money than what was allocated. The council then allocated additional funds for just the parking lot. So basically what's sitting there right now is $250,000 for a parking lot, a big parking lot. And the mayor has indicated that that's not what he wants to do. What he would rather do is have a smaller parking lot plus an additional field area for playing, which will cost more than is already allocated, to the tune of approximately $350. So he's asking for another $100,000 add on that $250.
Right.
Steve, perfect.
Right.
I say table
But the
this.
concern is the parking.
Yes. But that solve, that 250 from the previous council, would that address Somerset parking? Would that alleviate?
Yes.
Okay, so that 250 from the previous council will alleviate the parking situation on Somerset. Okay. That's what I'm trying to get at. Right. We already have that, why not utilize that? Why not table this for, we have.
But why table? Why don't we just do the parking then?
Well, they have
If
the money,
that's-
so
They have that approved.
Okay, but the mayor said he doesn't want to do that. So that's why I said, what's the remedy here to the neighborhood?
Well, this is what a council's for, right? We resolve issues and work through problems
That's
and
what I'm trying to do.
allocate monies and
Yeah.
stuff like that, correct? We all have wish lists, and our job is to allocate those funds to where we see where it should be properly allocated to. And since they already have the 250 already sitting there, and it was to address the parking situation on Somerset, why not have them utilize that money first? And this is still.
Let me ask the solicitor, if I could ask Mike, the 250,000 that was previously approved for the parking, and does this council have authority to approve that project now, as it was previously planned?
I want to have to defer to the finance director because I want to know what happens to capital funds that are not expended if they're allocated in a previous fiscal year. I don't know the answer to that question. How do you handle that?
And this is what I would like to see going forward, that if a council approves a project that could be done within that year, I think it should be, that project should be completed within that year. Now, I understand there are certain items like fire trucks and vehicles that there's a waiting period and we have to pay down on it, but projects going forward, I think, should be done within that cycle year.
So So my answer to your question will depend upon what the finance director answers. I don't know how that handles. So if a previous council allocated money for capital funds and they were not expended, and we just adopted a budget with a new total for capital funds, what happens to the previously unencumbered, unspent capital funds that were appropriated by in a previous budget year? What do you do with those?
For the most part, they would stay open for 2 years for the simple reason, like the fire truck takes almost a year to get in. So you have the current year and the following year to spend it. Now that we've set up a separate capital fund, I've been talking with the mayor about coming up with a policy exactly for that. I have set up a capital fund which shows you which department it's in, what year it was approved, and within that year, how many were approved. I mean, you could have 3 or 4, so it could be 2019-1, 2019-2, 2019-3.
So what about this project?
So is this still, I guess the question is this, even though this was approved in a previous budget cycle and unspent, is this money still part of a previous capital budget that's still live, or do you take the position that with the new budget, everything else that wasn't spent gets wiped out and they got to reappropriate it?
It's still live.
Okay, so that's a finance question, then that's how he handles it. So,
And therefore, this council's authority to make it formal tonight?
You could reapprove it. Yeah, it's already approved, but if you want to reaffirm it, you can do that as well. You don't have to, but
It's reapproved, but it's not getting done.
So I think at the end of the day, it just comes down to we as a council approve and make recommendations, set funds aside for things throughout the city, but it is the mayor or the administrative's choice whether they decide to follow through with those projects or not. We don't really have the authority.
Do you direct the funds if there's a reason why? I can't. Yes, basically you're right.
I mean, we can't twist anybody's hands to get those projects going. But we use this. We do have the right to hold, obviously, the administration accountable for not getting these things done. And I think that's where this conversation initially started. When we started the budget, is why do we have this long list of rolling projects that have not been done, and we're still every year adding to the list of projects to do when we haven't, in good faith, done the last 2 years' worth of capital projects.
But it does say, installation of additional fields. I think one result could be, if we approve this as submitted for $100,000, then that prior monies plus this would get that portion of Riverside Rec Complex done. It would create a little bit smaller parking that the administration seems to think is more appropriate, and spend a little more of that space on a field, which anybody who goes by there knows. Ask the Little Leagues and the football and the soccer people if there are enough fields in the city. You're not going to get anybody to say yes. So, in a roundabout way, we force the issue by approving this. I mean, at this point, I've said my piece. I'll let constituents know how I handled it, and if it doesn't get done, it doesn't get done. But and then we can look, as Councilwoman says, to that other part, closer towards the Tot Park area, which is basically just all-purpose right now, and maybe whatever we're thinking, another Little League field. I don't know.
I mean, we have a Little League field there. We have a roaded basketball, if you want to call it a basketball.
Well, it's a big field. It's not a Little League field. It's not a...
But we do have another field there.
Yeah.
And are we addressing putting toilets, for people? You can't make something where you're going to attract more people to use it, but then you're not even providing them their basic needs of a washroom.
But similar to the carousel, we're not going to do everything at once. This would get, in my mind, the parking solved and a little more field space solved, which they do need. I went to a game the other day. They were playing in front of the school, in the triangle, because they didn't have room.
So
I agree, but...
I would submit, really, the council's job, right? I mean, the budget is sort of an initial plan. The council's job going forward is to make sure that the expenditure occurs and then the project actually takes place, right? And I think, we have some members that are opposed to this additional allocation for what sounds like good reason. We have some members, I think, that support it. Maybe the best way to work through these is if you support something, put it up for a vote, see where it goes. If we have to discuss, we have to discuss. To me, I'm ready to move approval, or did you already move for approval of that particular item?
To tell you the truth, I don't know if I made the motion yet. I'm ready to discussion.
I just did. Right, and if we want to continue discussing, that's fine.
That's my intent, too. Put it out there and...
Some of these items, Councilman Rodrick, like this one, I don't want to see it shut down tonight. I like to see a little bit more, as to what the city is doing with that 250. There's nothing wrong with putting this off for a couple of months if we have to take it.
The only thing wrong with it is it's another year it doesn't get done.
But there's already 250 already allocated to start that parking situation problem and so on.
The one thing I will say is that, per the charter, per the city's ordinances, is if it's an expenditure or a contract that the mayor needs to negotiate in excess of a certain amount of money, and there's some question to me as to whether that's $50,000 or $100,000,
$50,000,
which is this project certainly would be, that will have to come back to us for approval. So, if there's a project that they go out for RFP, we decide we don't like the project for one reason or another, we can reject the expenditure. To that end, I think to me it makes sense to at least allocate the money. Let's see what they can get, go out for RFP, because they know they can't go RFP right now with the smaller parking lot and the field that they want to put in place.
See, I'm from a different school as far as this is concerned. I believe that the $250,000 was already set aside for the parking. The parking was the primary issue that we had in that particular area over there. There wasn't so much of the field. I say, let's proceed with the parking, and let's see where we end up with the field. So I wouldn't mind doing that at all. But the money was set aside for the parking. That's the biggest concern over there.
I would agree with that. My only fear is that the parking lot will be so big that there won't be room for this field that we want to add. And I think we need
then we build the parking lot according to the size, and then we can just work off however.
Well, I think that's what this would do. It would build a little smaller parking lot and still give us another good-sized field.
But he could make, if the smaller parking lot is what they're looking to do, it still can be done. You can still make a smaller parking lot. You don't have to create a larger parking lot just because that's what initially was. So you would have a surplus in the fund. So if initially it was 250, but you're doing it's a little bit smaller, so maybe you have a surplus of 50 left over. That then can come back. Well, we've done the parking lot. It's going to be sufficient now. Let's get onto the field.
Mr. President, I've made a motion. I'm kind of running out of gas. I wonder if we could take.
What is your motion?
I move to approve the allocation of the $100,000 for that project.
I'll just ask one more question to the solicitor. All of these capital improvement projects, when it does come back with an RFP, when they do get answers after an RFP, it will then come to the council for passage through a resolution, correct? To have the project go ahead. So if anything over 50,000, it will have to have council approval, correct?
Mike?
I'm thinking because,
Mike,
sorry.
Not you, Mike, but that Mike.
I'm sorry. I'd like to think about that because you're actually giving approval now for the expenditure of funds. I assume that if it was a contract, I'm not really sure. I would, to be safe, I would prefer that come back, but that would be my recommendation. But I'd like to look at that a little because one of the reasons why these things get delayed is because of the fact that you have to appropriate money and then you come back and that takes time because you only meet twice a month and we get an RFP and then I don't really. I'll have to look at that. But
and turning it down now, can it always be revisited?
Of course, yes, you can always revisit it. Yep.
There's always that option if that gets that point. So,
knowing the history here, though, so I'll second that.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor for approval of the line item for the Riverside Recreational Complex, seconded by Councilman Rodrick. Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morado.
Nay.
Councilwoman Souza.
In the keeping with knowing that allocating these funds and that an RFP to clear 5 acres of land will have to probably take place because DPW is not going to be able to do that on its own. I'm going to vote in the affirmative, knowing that they have to come back to allocate the money again in an RFP form, so I'm going to say aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Aye. Thank you.
So I don't have any others. I have interest in others, but I'll yield the floor to other councilors who may want to bring up something before we head towards adjournment.
I personally don't have anything for tonight. I'd rather continue any of mine, discussions, or only because we have a lengthy resolutions for second passage to get through, and with the hour approaching.
And just to move this along, excuse me, I wouldn't mind if, at the pleasure of the council, before we get into second passage of ordinances, perhaps have the mayoral communications go through at this point in time.
May I ask one question, Mr. President? At the last budget meeting, we did approve allocation for a number of these projects before we quit for the night.
Yes.
Like the carousel was one of them. Sam, do we have a record of which ones we gave the yay on already?
Yes, we do. We have it. However,
I actually have, I know, and I don't know complete list, but this was in order, correct? So the previous meetings, we approved the tax assessment collection software, accountant software.
I think Malcolm might have something.
So approved, I'm just going to read off what the finance director gave us. So tax collection and software was approved, accounting system was approved, the arts grant was approved, the Runs River Channel improvement was approved, the pedestrian sign improvement was approved, 4 police cruisers were approved, the parking lot expansion, as you know, was approved for the police, the replacement Station 3 walkway was approved, the replacement of the AC conditioning was approved, ductwork system for the station was also approved. The
Cardiac monitors, I believe.
Yep.
Grant.
Yep, cardiac monitors
The
was
existing lease.
approved.
Engine 3, right? You said that already?
Yep. The lease. And I think that was...
I think we had a question on the parking lot expansion, though. I don't know if we
That
actually...
passed
Yeah.
3-2.
Councilwoman, what about the basketball court renovation?
That was not, it doesn't have it.
Okay, I know we discussed it and that
Yeah, we didn't.
Damian Ramus spoke and...
We didn't get that
Right,
far.
we didn't get there.
Okay.
I would like to put out for the council that we move to approve the allocation of $250,000 for the basketball court renovation. And again, that project was the effort to effectively cover the tennis courts with more basketball court space. Given Mr. Ramus's testimony,
Do you have the
if you will,
mic on?
having seen that, I think that that's something that we need.
I make a motion to second that. I
Okay.
agree.
So this approval for the basketball court expansion over at Pierce Field. We have a motion on the floor. Second it. Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Aye. Thank you.
Mr. President,
We want to jump-
No, but before we move on, could I ask Director Kudo a question? Of the
Approved now.
projects that we have not done yet, do you, as DPW Director, have a burning issue and need to get started on anything here, or are you set with waiting? Is there something that we have not approved that you, in your professional opinion, due to timing and et cetera?
Well, if I could, we
I wasn't
didn't,
sure what was approved and not approved either.
we didn't discuss, well, we didn't put for a vote the Taunton Avenue drainage improvement, which I know was a
Right.
big thing
Right.
with the engineering and the state. So and that.
I'm just trying to see if there's a critical one that, that you don't want to wait on.
Any equipment?
Any of these projects, in your opinion, is there?
Any of the projects, I mean, there's been a lot of talk regarding, hard numbers, are these the right numbers? These are budget numbers, right? So, we're not going to get or get hard RFP numbers until we get the budgets approved, right? So any of these projects that require, significant engineering work, as soon as they get approved, we can start, focusing, on these things.
Right, and aside from that, like the Councilwoman's talking about the Taunton Avenue drainage, is that something that's critical to?
Yeah, that's one that we'd love to get
going on.
So maybe, and there's a lot of permitting involved with that.
Right.
We get DOT.
That was on my list for approval anyway, so if anyone,
I made a motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morado.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Aye, thank you. We can get right to the point on some of these.
Right.
If you see something up there you want to,
we've
general
discussed
senses
a lot.
and we discuss, let's just move forward on a vote with them.
Would you like me to read the ones that are not approved? I have a list.
Oh, sure.
Well, are we going for all of them this evening?
I mean, I was hoping not to.
Yeah, I thought we were just going to touch on a few of them.
I mean, I
and then
think we
were gonna-
touched on a few. I would prefer if it.
To move on?
Yeah, if the council.
Unless somebody has something
Because we
pressing
have
at this
a
time.
meeting next week.
If it's a burning need, come back to another meeting.
I mean, we have a meeting next week, so we can
Right.
continue this. I make a motion to continue the rest of these to next week's meeting.
Second. Roll call vote.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morado.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Aye, thank you. Let's proceed right on to mayoral communication, and then we'll jump into ordinances.
Mayoral Communications, announcement of appointment, Director of Planning and Economic Development, William Fazioli, and communication from Finance Director Moore regarding $6.5 million for capital funding.
Does anyone, did you need to speak about any of these?
I know we already spoke about the 6.5.
I think we've covered that for the next.
Yeah. So, don't want to euthanize the dead horse.
We covered it.
And then the appointment for Bill is just, that was a letter that was sent to the council, is addressed to the council president, dated September 23rd. And that's just him taking over with the new position that we had amended for the Department of Planning and Economic Development now. So he'll be working closely with finance and building inspection to, kind of market the city and take a more forward approach with development. And we can, I think I can speak for everyone when I say that there's no one more suited to the task than Bill.
Concur.
Agree.
Congratulations, Mr. Fazioli, and welcome aboard.
Make a motion to accept.
Motion to accept and file the communications.
Second.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morado.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Council President Brito.
Aye, thank you. Proceed right on to second passage. Can we proceed on to second passage for a vote for public hearings of ordinances, please?
Second passage. Ordinance of the Council of the City of East Providence ordering the assessment and collection of property tax on the rateable real estate, tangible personal property, and an excise tax on registered motor vehicles and trailers.
Again, this is a public hearing. Anyone here wishing to speak for or against this ordinance, please step forward to the podium. If not, public hearing is closed, and it's at the pleasure of the council to vote for second passage on this ordinance.
Move approval.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morado.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Council President Brito.
Aye, thank you. Next item, please.
Next item is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Finance to borrow funds in anticipation of taxes.
Again, this is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this ordinance, please step forward. If not, public hearing is now closed. At the pleasure of the council. Anyone have any discussion regarding this? We have a motion by Councilwoman Souza.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Cahoon. Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morado.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Council President Brito.
Aye, thank you. Next item, please.
An ordinance authorizing the Director of Finance to borrow funds in anticipation of bonds.
Again, this is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this ordinance, please step forward. If not, public hearing is now closed at the pleasure of the council.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion, seconded, roll call vote.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morado.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Council President Brito.
Aye, thank you. Next item, please.
Next item is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Finance to borrow funds in anticipation of revenue.
Again, this is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this ordinance, please step forward. If not, public hearing is now closed at the pleasure of the council.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morado.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Council President Brito.
Aye, thank you. Last ordinance, a second passage, please.
An ordinance in revised ordinances of the City of East Providence, Rhode Island, 1998, was amended entitled Administration, sponsored by Councilman Morado and Councilwoman Souza.
Again, this is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this ordinance, please step forward. If not, public hearing is now closed. I'll leave this at the pleasure of the council.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morado.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Aye, thank you. That concludes ordinances for second passages. And moving right along over to resolutions for vote.
Excuse me, City Solicitor report. City Solicitor report. You skipped me.
Oh, did I? Yeah. Oh, you're stuck in there, in between there.
saw
Okay, I'm
that.
sorry. City Solicitor,
Thank you.
Mr.
Sorry.
Marcelo.
Thank you, Council President, members of the City Council. As you know, you met as a Claims Committee at 6:30 in an executive session. The following claims were noted and paid as follows. New claims in the amount of $871.38 for Alton Arruda was approved. Claim of Paul Galligan in the amount of $564 was denied. Claim of Manuel Jorge in the amount of $1,270.94 was approved. Sewer charge abatements, unless otherwise indicated, all these were approved. For Eunice Adiamo in the amount of $141.66. Claim of the sewer abatement of Johnny Rivera in the amount of $414.35. And the claim of the sewer abatement of Daniel Carpenter Whiteback in the amount of $108.15 was approved. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Solicitor.
We did have an executive session on the litigation of the opioid epidemic litigation. No votes were taken. It was just a status update. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, if I may I move to seal the minutes from executive session?
Second.
We have a motion on the floor to seal the minutes from executive session by Councilman Cahoon, seconded by Councilwoman Souza. Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morado.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Council President Brito.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving right along to Section B, resolution for vote.
Resolution calling on the United States to lead a global effort to prevent nuclear war, sponsored by Council President Brito.
Mr. City Solicitor, I'd like to recuse myself from discussion or vote on this item and sit myself out there.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilman. This was brought to my attention by a constituent who has some concerns, and during the discussion, he brought up this resolution that's been sponsored by many cities throughout the state. However, that there's not one municipality, I would say, in the state of Rhode Island that even has come across this, at least that I know of. And just a little excerpt from what he has sent me was just, the campaign around the world, working hard, make sure the issues of everybody in mind, to use the nuclear weapons, would have catastrophic humanitarian and environmental impact, and the risk of these threats becoming reality is increasing at the alarming pace. We must eliminate nuclear weapons before it eliminates us. So that's just a little insert that was sent to me. And again, this is something that's been ongoing and spreading around the country throughout various states. And he asked me, and sitting down and talking to him, and essentially it's just, just putting the word out there about nuclear weapons, and I'm sure you're all aware of it anyway, and the devastating effects that it could have not only on this city or this state, but on the country as a whole. So when he asked me would I be interested in sponsoring this resolution, I said yes. And I'm going to leave it now up to the council for discussion, if anyone has any discussion at this point in time. I know this isn't a local issue that we ordinarily would deal with. Very seldomly that we come across something like this, but I thought,
And we wouldn't know it anyway.
And you wouldn't know it anyway.
I make a motion to approve.
Okay. Second. All right. Roll call vote.
Councilman Morata.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Aye.
Madam Clerk, would you please make sure you transpose that to President Trump in the morning?
I will do so.
Thank you.
And I will let him know Nate recused himself.
Next resolution. Next resolution, please.
Next resolution is authorizing the mayor to pay invoices for pre-construction expenses for the new East Providence High School, sponsored by Councilman Cahoon.
So, same thing we do every month. You see the amount there. I can go through it in detail. If you want, basically we're paying the architect, continuing to pay the architect for sort of the closing out of the design. We are at 75% construction design or construction document stage. We anticipate the 100% construction documents right by the end of the fall. We're looking in the kind of early December timeframe. You'll note that the foundation has begun to be poured. One really piece of good news I wanted to share with the council that we got in our last building committee meeting, we're starting to get in, as you know, obviously we started some work, so we're starting to get in, the different bits and pieces from the various subcontractors. We had estimated the steel expenditure to be somewhere in the area of about $10 million for all the steel for the building. It came in at about $7.5. The steel market is flooded, as it seems. So that was a nice adjustment for us. It allows us to go back and work and capture some of the opportunities or some of the, what we're calling alternatives at present. But what had been marked as an alternative was the turf field for sort of the front fields. We've always kept the back field, the football stadium, if you will, as a turf field. But obviously the preference is to make those fields all the way around the school turf, right, to save on maintenance, to keep it up, to keep it green, et cetera, et cetera. So it will allow us to kind of leverage those savings. Now, of course, we're going to run into overages on other items as well, but to date, the building committee, and I would really like to recognize the work of Joel Montero, Steve Amoroso, Gene Oakland in particular, have really been digging into the details of those individual bid packages, and that's a ton of work because we're getting in a gazillion of them now, and the pace is only going to increase. So the news continues to be good on the overall project. The project right now is coming in at 75% construction design at about $25,000 overall under the total estimate. And as we move along, we'll continue to be able to bring down some of those contingencies, that we put in place when, things were unknown. As we start to buy things and start to put them in place, some of those contingencies start to go away. Another thing that the building committee is really focused on, the state is very focused on the MBE requirements, which is, the minority business enterprise and women-owned business enterprise requirements. And that team has done an excellent job at maintaining the percentage at over the level of what the state mandates. So we've been able to kind of do all of that stuff under budget, on schedule, and at the same time meet all the state requirements. There's a ton of work going on with that team. We anticipate within the next couple of weeks. The building committee was treated to a virtual tour of the building at the architect's facility. And that's kind of specialized software in a humongous kind of file. So what they were able to do was break down kind of a segment of that file, and they're delivering that to the school department. So they're first going to show that to the school committee. The school committee will be inviting us for their next meeting. I think it's on the 12th of November, off the top of my head. But the next meeting that they have, they're going to kind of unveil that. So that'll be the first look for everybody. And I mean, it's amazing, the software that they use. You know, you can pan up, pan down, see this thing in all three dimensions and start to get an understanding of how impressive a space has been designed. So to that end, I'm putting forth a movement for the council. I move to approve payment of the invoices for the current month.
Thank you, Councilman. I just so happened to sit on that panel for the MBEs, and you and I had discussed that once before, and going forward, they're still encouraging more and more MBEs to, or soliciting MBEs for work on that project as subcontractors.
It's not being forgotten or overlooked. They're taking that very seriously.
And we have a meeting next week, actually, coming up next week at Gilbane's office. So we have a motion on the floor for approval.
I just have a question, if I may, Council President. Councilman Cahoon, can you give us to date how much we've spent on the architects? Do you have it?
No, I can't, and I should have that number. If you give me to the next meeting, I can bring you that number or send it to you in an email.
Okay. I think, just to let the public know, I know we, every month we're doing, 2.5, maybe a little less, maybe a little, so just to see where we're at in terms of how much we've spent, because I know that none of this has been reimbursed yet to the city because we haven't received any of the money from the state, correct?
We actually received an upfront allocation of $16 million from the state to kind of get the project going. The actual cost on the reimbursement on cost takes place after the cost is incurred. But what I can do is I can get you for the next meeting, which is on the 5th. If you'll bear with me till then, Sam, if we can even make that an item, I can come with the full expenditure details.
And so is that money coming out of what the state has, the $16 million that the state has given us up front, or is that?
Yes.
Okay, so that's what this money is coming out of?
Yes,
okay.
It's going to run out fairly quickly.
Sure.
But, which is the need for the bonds and everything else that Malcolm's explained.
Okay.
So right now, the project as a whole, over or under?
Under.
Under.
Not much under, but under.
But under.
A hair under.
Thank you. So we have a motion for approval on the floor at this point in time. Second it. Roll call vote.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morado.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Aye. Next resolution, please.
Next resolution is the resolution authorizing the mayor to execute the contract between the City of East Providence and Jessica Contracting Incorporated for the Charles I.D. Loof Carousel Painting, sponsored by Councilman Morado.
Does anyone need an explanation on this?
No.
No.
I'll make a motion to approve that.
Second.
Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morado.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Aye. Next resolution, please.
Resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an amendment to the Urban Coastal Greenway easement and declaration of restrictions recorded in the East Providence Land Evidence Records, Book 3730, page 185, sponsored by Council President Brito.
Mr. Solicitor, would you like to speak on behalf of the land evidence, please?
Yes, this is a minor technical amendment necessitated by the need. The planning department gave approval for a University Orthopedics has going to have a rehab center there. Because where they're relocating that rehab center, there's a little bit of an easement that needs to be adjusted that has been previously given by the state. A little bit of the land is the city's, and a little bit of the land is some other, the owners of other property. It's a technical amendment. This has been approved by the CRMC, but however, only the city council can grant easements and or uses of land. That's why it became to the city council for their approval. It's a technical amendment. Our planning department has signed off on this as well.
Thank you for that explanation.
Motion to approve.
Second. Roll call vote.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Council President Brito.
Aye. Thank you. Next and final resolution, please.
Resolution in support of an exemption to Rhode Island General Laws, Statute 3-7-19, with regard to proximity of a liquor license to a regular place of worship, sponsored by Councilman Cahoon.
So Rhode Island General Law, specifically 3-7-19, prohibits businesses operating within proximity of schools, parochial schools, and places of worship from obtaining liquor licenses and selling alcohol. What this resolution will do is to provide this particular business, which is specifically Union Burrito, who's going to be opening up in brick and mortar form in the square. It provides, now this would have to be approved by the city, by the General Assembly, once the General Assembly comes back into session in January. But it's a resolution asking the General Assembly to exempt this particular business from this particular law. This does not grant the business a liquor license. They would then have to apply for a liquor license, again, with approval of the City Council. But what this will allow them to do is to apply through that process.
And where is this location, Councilman?
Down at Riverside Square. The address is here, 332 Bullocks Point.
It's the old, it's a previous Proud Mary's.
Used to be Proud Mary's Donuts.
Oh, okay.
They just closed.
Right there?
And are reopening.
Oh, all right.
So my
Going from
only-
donuts to burritos.
Yeah. So my only concern with this, Councilman, is, and I recognize that there's a lot of house cleaning legislation that needs to be done. So I'm not opposed to providing a resolution to support such a request. My only concern is that it's self-limiting to this establishment or owner itself. I would suggest that if the council has a, appetite for this, then it would open it up to citywide, because I myself in my ward have a lot of businesses and churches and schools that are in close proximity. So then I wouldn't find it fair, and I don't think other people would find it fair that they wouldn't be able to have the same right as this particular business, only because we excluded it just for them, meaning that we would have to come back and present it to the General Assembly again to exclude, each individual business. So I think if this is something that we feel comfortable with, I would suggest that we make it citywide so that we're not signaling out other businesses. And for an example, I had a resident a couple of years ago who was interested in the old Arts Fellow building on Warren Ave, and the idea that person had was to have a cafe that in the evening would turn into kind of like an after-dinner, cocktail. You go there for, an after-dinner brandy or a glass of wine. But because that building is in between, two buildings over is a church, it was never going to work for that person. So they had to take that into consideration, and that's why they didn't bid on the building and purchase it and move on with their venture. So that being said, I don't know how the rest of the council feels about this in general. I'm okay with it as long as it's not specific for this just one person, but it's opened up for the whole city.
So the reason I think, and the interesting thing about the law, I've read through that law, and again, no attorney, but reading through that law in its current format, it actually exempts a number of specific businesses and land tracts. At no point does it exempt an entire city from the law. Mike, I don't know if you have anything to contribute to that. I don't know what their appetite, I would say that anybody who has an interest in obtaining a liquor license and seeking an exemption can follow the exact same process, look for a resolution through the City Council, ask the General Assembly to consider it. I don't know what the appetite for the General Assembly would be to, exempt the entire city of East Providence from your law. I suspect it would be.
Right, and I understand. I know we have zoning. I think our own house statute has charter ordinances that also, for zoning reasons, are the same. So I would think that we would have to change our own zoning if that was the case?
So the state statute that the Councilman Cahoon is talking about basically says that no city or town can grant a liquor license within 200 feet of a school or a church. That's state law. And you're a licensing board, so that prevents any city and town from doing so. What happens is, and it's a Puritan era law, what happens is that inevitably somebody wants to open a business 200 feet from a church or a school, they get a specific exemption from that law by putting the plat lot number. And so at the General Assembly, instead of getting rid of the entire law, they just give an exemption per parcel, per town. So you do have to go that way. If you want to sponsor a resolution asking the General Assembly to get rid of the law completely, I would support that if I was in the General Assembly, because it's ridiculous, because it's an antiquated.
I mean, I think the times are different.
Yeah, it's an antiquated law. But
back in the 50s,
right.
Where there were thriving bars and saloons.
That's the process how we use it now.
The only issue I have with that, by opening it to the city, the whole citywide, it's what's going to prevent someone from opening up a liquor store or a bar or whatnot across from a school? That's one of my biggest concerns.
Right.
I mean, if this is a case by case, and then my other question would be, is there anything we can do that we can, if this was to come to fruition, give that license, but then that license would not convey with that business if he sold it to something else? So right now it would be like a, beer type establishment, but then if he sells it, is he opening it up to, I'm a biker myself, but a biker bar?
Well, the resolution exempts that piece of property, right? Whatever business would come in there, I would assume would have to apply for a license, just like, the business, the license
Correct.
itself wouldn't transfer without our approval, kind of like we did tonight.
I would feel, me personally, I feel a little bit more comfortable doing a case-by-case versus opening it to citywide. I understand the solicitor. Point being that he was in the General Assembly, you're going to keep seeing these resolutions.
This won't pass unless there's a local resolution. So they will when the General Assembly comes back in session, your local delegation will get this, and they'll put it in a special bill exempting that property, plot, lot number from that law. And before it's passed, and it generally passes as a matter of right, they just look for a local resolution to ensure that the city and town's okay with that. And that's how. But it's time consuming. To me, I agree with Councilwoman Souza. It's an antiquated law that should be repealed. But a lot of people like it because it forces them to come to the city council and get approval for a liquor license.
And we're constantly approving houses of worship to sell alcohol at their various events.
Right, that's what I mean. So it's not, so again, to Councilman Morato's point, I understand what you're saying, but they would still have to come to us for the license to have a liquor store. The city can only give out so many liquor store licenses as it is, not so much like the restaurants. But, like the city solicitor says, that exemption stays with that property. So whoever it changes hands to or whatever comes in and out, they'll always have the ability. And so then the case comes, well, you gave him a liquor license, how come I can't get a liquor license?
Right.
And like Mike said, obviously somebody could come here, but I never knew that you could do a resolution to the state legislators to ask for an exemption, just like I'm sure a lot of people don't. So obviously this person must have known somebody and had a conversation and, found that route, and that's why it's here for us today and going up. But most people, I don't think, I never knew that was something that you could do. I just felt it was a hard law, and it wasn't.
For the sake of free market, this is a check and balance in the end, where if we do open it to citywide, where we have the ultimate decision to say, well, you cannot open up a liquor store across from the school, or but we do have that authority as a council, correct? That was the case.
Well, right now you can't. You can't.
But if that was to pass citywide, we would still have the ultimate say.
Yes, but you couldn't deny it because it's located within a school, because you got rid of that exemption to begin with.
Right.
So that's a problem. That's a dilemma. So I'd rather see this do case by case than.
And that's what historically has been done.
Right. And for the sake of putting this through this evening, I think, we should stick with, just this one particular resolution.
Mr. President, I move approval.
Okay.
Second it.
All right, roll call vote.
Councilman Cahoon?
Aye.
Councilman Morato?
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza?
Nay.
Council Vice President Rogers?
Aye.
And Council President Brito?
Aye. And look,
Mr. President, before we adjourn, could I just ask the city clerk, I don't want to be a micromanager, but I want to make sure that these projects we've all been talking about get done. So could you please, I'm sure you're going to do this anyway, but in the morning, could you give to Director Furtado the list of the capital projects that we have approved so that he could then sit down with the mayor and get the ball rolling? Because I know in the past, other administrations, I'm not casting aspersions, but there have been projects approved and they didn't go anywhere. So I'd like to try to get out ahead of that. And I'm asking the city clerk if she would contact you, Director Furtado, and if you could then let the mayor know what transpired tonight. I would appreciate that. With that, I move to adjourn.
okay?
Second.
Roll call vote.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morado.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza. Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.